I'm getting I'm getting the top of the hour calls for 9 o'clock. 30 seconds away from the 9 o'clock poll closings. Forgive me, you caught me talking to the control room. Here are the 9 o'clock.
We're going to have now poll closings at Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, Wyoming. All of those states are pulling in their poll closings right now.
9 p.m. in the East has just turned, and here we go. These are our latest projections. Texas Senate, too early to call. We're giving Cruz a slight lead in this race as of now. Texas governor, reelected the winner, Governor Abbott. Here is the two-way race of the Texas governor's race as we look at the math that went into this. Wisconsin Governor Evers is the lead, but officially too close to call. Arizona Senate, too close to call. Remember, these western states just coming in. North Dakota Senate, too early, though so far Kramer is leading. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand going back to the Senate. In Minnesota, our guest earlier, Amy Klobuchar, going back to the Senate. And then these are coming in fresh. This is Heinrich going back to the Senate, New Mexico. And now I'll take them off the side of the building. Tammy Baldwin, Democrat in Wisconsin, going back to the Senate. Wyoming, Barrasso, a member of the senior Republican leadership, returning to the Senate. Here's the Michigan race. Too early to call. Minnesota, too early to call. And at this hour, the U.S. Senate, let's pan down on the ice. Notice again, gray seats, undecided, 17 question marks with a 44-39 split in the U.S. Senate.
We should mention that in Minnesota is in the unusual position of having both of its senators, both of its Senate seats up right now. The senior senator from Minnesota now is Amy Klobuchar. She did not have a difficult race this year. NBC News has projected that she will be returning to the Senate. And again, that was an easy one. The second Minnesota Senate race is the one that was just too early to call there. That's Tina Smith. She holds the seat that was held by Democrat Al Franken until he resigned from that seat. Tina Smith is facing a challenge from Karen Housley right now. Tina Smith is an incumbent, though she has never before run for this seat. She was appointed to fill that seat. So again, that's too early to call right now. Minnesota, one of the only states where we've got both seats up.
We have two pieces of business. Tennessee Senate, I'm told we're going to get an update live from the control room. Blackburn wins. She has turned away Bredesen in the Tennessee Senate race. Both parties fought hard for this one, but our projection is when it's all counted, all said and done, Marsha Blackburn will represent the United States Senate. Remember, this is a net hold for the Republican Party. This is the Corker seat. Back over to the board, Steve Kornacki we got a nail biter in Florida.
Yeah, so take a look here. Let's start on the governor's side here. The difference, you can see it is 90,000 votes. We take you through again. The Democrat Andrew Gillum, 90,000 votes behind right now. Where is the outstanding vote? For Democrats, there are two places we're really talking about here. It is Broward and Miami-Dade. These are the two places where Gillum, he's running very strongly. There's a lot of vote left. Again, our estimate here has been, and this is an estimate, so this is subject to a little bit of change here, but our estimate has been about 630,000 will end up being the final vote count out of Broward. We may get somewhere closer to 900,000 out of Miami-Dade. If we use those two estimates and we put Gillum at the current rate he's getting, he may be able to get a 60,000 vote or so plurality out of these two counties. So again, if you're down, basically 90,000 votes statewide, that would eat into it. Now, in terms of the Republican side, though, go up to the Panhandle, and you can find a couple places here. They're smaller, but they're places where DeSantis, you can see here, for instance, Bay County, DeSantis winning by a better than 2-to-1 margin. There is still vote to come in there. You can go to Calhoun County. DeSantis is going to win this by a huge margin. Still plenty of vote to come in there. So the Democrats have some big, densely populated areas with a lot of votes, and Gillum can make up a lot of the ground there. But there are around the state scatterings of precincts and big chunks of these smaller Republican counties where DeSantis will be able to counter not all of that, but some of that. And when he goes in 90,000 votes ahead, that's worth keeping in mind. Also on the Senate side, you could see the margin 58,000 here for Rick Scott over Bill Nelson. Keep in mind the basic turnout math I just took you through right there. Nelson maybe right now a little bit closer than Gillum in this thing.
Steve Kornacki at the big board for us. Thank you. I want a little bit of news out of Florida. One of the ballot initiatives in Florida that has raised a lot of national attention, including statewide effort, has been Amendment 4, which would restore voting rights to felons. This affects over 1 million potential voters in Florida, and this is now, we've got a projected answer on Amendment 4 in Florida. It looks to be, it looks like Amendment 4 will pass. That's a big deal, not just for the people directly affected by having their voting rights restored in Florida. This is a big issue of racial justice because of the racial disproportionate impact of this type of policy. And this was also thought to be a potential turnout issue in terms of Democratic turnout in Florida. With the Senate race and the governor's race still too close to call at this point, we'll wait to see whether this may end up being a determinative factor. We want to go now to Florida, to our great friend Joy Reid, who is at Gillum headquarters as this governor's race seems to be riding in on a knife edge at the end. Joy, how is it there?
Hey, how are you, Rachel? So it is back and forth. You know, welcome to Florida elections. You heard Steve Kornacki explaining how close it is. I can tell you that having worked in a couple, you know, when I was not in media, I was working in politics, what you know is coming in at the end of the road is always Broward County, my former county. It's always bringing up the rear. And so for Democrats, basically what has to happen, as Steve mentioned, is that you're going to have to get a big piece of the vote in. Broward is the largest county. It's the county with the heaviest Democratic registration. It's a county that's heavily African American. It's a county where the Cuban American population is younger, and so they tend to vote more Democratic. But it also is a very slow counting county. It takes a long time to get that vote in. So basically for Democrats to win, they essentially have to run up the score in places like Tampa, Hillsborough County, in places where I am now, Leon County, and they have to really max it out in Broward. So it is tight. All Florida elections are tight. Never listen to polls that say anybody is up 2-4 in Florida. No one's ever up 2-4 in Florida. It's always tight until the very end. You really won't know, really until even the absentees come in. So it's tough. But I think people here are cautiously optimistic. You always have to be optimistic because Florida really can go either way. There are people cheering behind me because MSNBC just came up. We're a little delayed. So you're going to hear a lot of noise behind me and people like you guys. So
hi, you guys.
I think people are being enthusiastic. They are staying positive. We're just going to have to ride it out to the bitter end.
Joy Reid at Gillum headquarters, which is definitely a party at this point.
Can I tell you one real quick thing?
Yeah,
Can I tell you one real quick thing that did happen here tonight in Florida that is important? Amendment 4, which is the amendment that will restore voting rights to 1.5 million people who already paid their debt to society and had felony records, that passed. So whatever happens tonight, that amendment is going to be hugely important for voting rights in Florida.
Appreciate that, Joy. Absolutely. Just reported that just before we got to you. Again, we do have a projection on that ballot measure in Florida. And there's ballot measures that are of interest all across the country. Not every one of them will we have a national call for you tonight. But as these, minimum wage ballots and redistricting ballot initiatives and medical marijuana and recreational marijuana initiatives come in, to the extent that we get calls on those at the national level from states that are considering those things, we will keep you posted. That first one that we've conveyed to you tonight, again, Amendment 4 restoring voting rights to felons in Florida, affecting well over 1 million potential voters. That one seems to have passed with flying colors.
That's a big deal. In fact, the first cheer when Joy was talking was our delayed graphic that it had indeed passed, being seen by the crowd. Steve Kornacki, if you've watched any of our broadcasts, has explained the lineup of the Senate by taking states in and out of the center. And now tonight it becomes for real.
Yeah, and with those calls now, this becomes, let me just show you where we stand right now. With the calls in Indiana, in Tennessee that have just been made, we've got North Dakota. I'm going to put this out here yet. We haven't actually made a call. So that puts Republicans at 49, with this being the battlefield. You could see just a minute ago, if North Dakota, if Heitkamp does not come through in North Dakota, we will see. That right there would put Republicans at 50. That would preserve the majority, except for this. I got to take you through this scenario because this will come up, become an issue on the screen here. What's going to happen in the next few minutes, Democrats obviously will still have to win everything else that's left here. That's a very tall order for them. But the other thing that's going to happen is you've got that Senate race in Mississippi. In fact, I can show it to you. You've got that Senate race in Mississippi. That's sort of a jungle primary tonight, that special election. If nobody gets 50% here, they go to a special election. Now, right now, this is designated as a Republican seat. If you get the top two get locked in here, that will then be designated as a toss-up. And what it will do, it's complicated accounting here, but what will happen is this Republican number will be reduced by 1, and Mississippi is going to pop up in this toss-up screen. So what that would mean, possibly even if the Republicans got North Dakota, if the Democrats somehow got everything, then Mississippi and that runoff would end up being the deciding state. So, again, the trend Democrats are seeing here, just in terms of Indiana going, Tennessee going so quickly, is not encouraging for them on the Senate side. But that math is still alive for them, and that's just something, no matter what, you need to keep in mind as we return to this screen tonight. You will probably see Mississippi pop up here. You will probably see this Republican number drop by 1 at some point. That's what it is. It means Mississippi is taken off the board. It's declared a toss-up seat because we have the runoff coming.
Steve, I have to ask you about some of these. Anything from Montana? Anything from Nevada? And what's the update on Florida? Forgive me for hopping all over.
Yeah, no, I'm as curious as you are about Florida. So, in fact, let's just take a look at Florida right now, and let's just call it up and see where we stand. 893, 56,000 vote lead for Rick Scott over Bill Nelson. So, again, I think we're in the same position we were in. That's the same position we were in Miami-Dade, same position we were in Broward County. Just make sure there's been no change here on the governor's side. That's not the statewide. Here's the statewide number. That's a 88,000 vote advantage there. Yes, so that is about the same as we were before. In terms of the Senate here, Missouri. You can see right now, Josh Hawley, this is earlier waiting. St. Louis City is just coming in. We await on St. Louis County. There's only a few counties in Missouri that Democrats win, but they get a lot of votes out of them. And we could take a look up here, see if anything is coming in. In fact, in North Dakota, we've got our very earliest votes coming from very Republican counties. Here in Montana,
Montana, of course, is 10 o'clock.
I don't even have track of the time anymore.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
So that's where we are. And on the House side, again, I want to show you very quickly. We've been talking about Virginia 7 all night. Dave Bratt leading here. I just want to flag this, though. The big piece of outstanding real estate here in Virginia is right here. Is this county, Chesterfield County. This is a third of the district. This was a tie in 2016, Trump versus Clinton. The Democrats have been counting on Spanberger winning this by a couple points. It is a big part of the district, so there's an opportunity there for the Democrats to make up some of that gap. But again, you see it's about a 6,500 vote gap Spanberger will take into that county in one of these key districts we've been following.
Fascinating.
Our friend Mr. Carville was so critical to sensing the turn 2016. And I have a feeling his comments tonight are going to be critical on what he sees, the way he would term what he's witnessing to.
Yes, well, he was very clear saying, well, clearly this isn't a Democratic wave election.
Yeah.
But not knowing what's going to happen in Florida, watching it come down to the wire. First of all, are there going to be recounts in Florida?
Well, there's an automatic recount.
At what threshold?
It's at 1%.
How do they go traditionally?
Well, I got to ask the Supreme Court. There's so much that happens before you get. I mean, they count absentees and they count military ballots, and then sometimes you go to court to figure out who, which ballots get counted and which don't.
Then HBO makes a movie about it.
But you rule out, overvotes and undervotes and whatnot. What's interesting to me, we had Texas up a minute ago. What's interesting is how far below Abbott's number Ted Cruz is running tonight. He, if you're a Republican, a Texas Republican, you think Texas Republicans just vote for Republicans. Not so. There are people that voted for the Republican governor and voted for Beto. And Garrett Haake was in the state. He's been in the state for days, and he was talking about the Abbott Beto voter. We saw that in the numbers that we put up before. Ted Cruz also, runs behind Donald Trump, who won the state by 9 points, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that much for a Republican. So this is going to be interesting no matter how it turns out. And Florida hasn't had a Democratic governor in a long time, and we may have misrepresented the ease with which Gillum is going to win if he wins. It's a really hard state.
The other thing that could be happening in Florida is the old Bradley effect. I mean, which once affected, lowered the election day vote totals of black candidates.
Explain how that works.
Well, it's named after former LA Mayor Tom Bradley, who kept running for governor, and polls would show that he would win, and somehow on election day he would lose.
So people talking to pollsters and say, yes, I'm going to vote for the black candidate.
Yes, I'm going to vote for the black candidate, and then they wouldn't.
But they could also be lying about voting for Donald Trump, who's running on an overtly racist themes.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true. So, so you were tempted to think that maybe that was done with after Barack Obama won the presidency twice, in many places doing better than his polls, but nothing ever really goes away, does it?
I
don't think it's gone away.
We're talking about the possibility of a recount in Florida, and we're all remembering 2000 and the recount there. And a lot of people are saying heading into tonight, and I did a thing about this on my show this week, about the prospect of there being recounts in Southern California, if that's what it comes down to in terms of control of Congress, and imagining everybody crowding into the Orange County Registrar's office to fight those fights. But what Steve just laid out about Mississippi, like, let's say that Heidi Heitkamp loses in North Dakota, but Beto wins in Texas, and all of those other states in the Senate go for the Democrats. They do great. And ultimately, it looks like there probably is going to be a runoff in Mississippi. I mean, I'm not saying that mathematically. I'm just saying there's 3 people in the race. They're all getting a chunk of it. Nobody looks like they're getting to 50. If the Democrats win control of the House and control of the Senate then depends on a Mississippi recount that happens 5 days after Thanksgiving. With a black candidate running against a Republican who had to beat out the other Republican in order to make it into the runoff. Can you just imagine how insane that's going to be for the country? Can you imagine the way that Trump is going to campaign in Mississippi on a recount that's going to determine whether or not the entire Congress is controlled by the opposite party? No. I mean,
it's a tough one for Democrats because you've got 2 Republicans really running in that, the vote
splitting the Republican.
The vote will combine in the general.
When it becomes the national race and when it becomes a race of national import and it's down to Mississippi Senate race.
Can I be a morale officer for progressives watching right now? Just a couple minutes.
Hit it.
I listened to Steve, who's the expert, and nobody's better than him. And he said basically the mean right now possibility is 224. Well, that's 6 more than 218. They could go up to 232, and that would be a substantial, that would be mid-30s almost, a victory. So I think we're still, for those who are hopeful people, it's a good night to have a couple cups of coffee and stay with us till 2 in the morning, because I think the Democrats could end up picking up that, what I would call a wave, 30-some points, 30+ seats. I don't know what Carville meant by a wave. He may have meant 60. I'm not sure what he meant. We didn't really nail him down on what he meant by a wave.
Let me do this. Let me give everyone time to think about it, because I've been asked to send us to a break. We'll be right back, and any big calls will come out of the break and report. (9:20 p.m. Eastern Time). We knew this was going to be a long night. We knew it was going to be a dramatic night. We just didn't know exactly where. Here's your answer. Florida, Senate, too close to call. Florida, Governor, too close to call. Oh, and for good measure, let's go out to the Lone Star State, where Greg Abbott has been elected governor, but where the drama right now is in the race for Senate, Ted Cruz's Senate seat in Texas. Too early to call. We are at 49.7 to 49.7, with coming up on 60% of the vote in.
Less than 100 votes between them.
Between Florida and Texas at this hour. Mostly, though, because it's an East Coast state, because of the overwhelming percentage of raw vote in from Florida. That's causing most of the perspiration over in the corner with Coach K. Hey, Steve, what about Florida House?
Yeah, well, so the House situation, first of all, I should tell you, a call just in the last minute, one more flip. This one expected. Remember, we said that new map in Pennsylvania created some almost layups for Democrats. Here's one. It's now official. The 5th District, Mary Gay Scanlon, she will now go to Congress. She's going to win easily here. You see, under the new lines, Clinton would have won this district in 2016 by 30 points. So we figured this would happen. It's now official. Happened. It means that on this big chart here, Democrats have now posted 3 pickups tonight. Again, these are 3 pickups all in districts that Hillary Clinton carried or would have carried in 2016. In Florida, you see, this kind of tells you the story, I think, in terms of the closeness we are seeing in the governor's and the Senate race. A little unexpected resiliency for those Republican candidates. 4 Republican targets, 4 congressional districts Democrats thought they had a chance and have already been called. They will remain in Republican hands. Still waiting on the 26th district. This is Carlos Curbelo. This is another Clinton district. Clinton won this district, you could see, by double digits, in fact, 16 points. This was the second most pro-Clinton Republican seat in the 2016 election, a 16-point Hillary Clinton victory in this district. Carlos Curbelo fighting for his political life right now down there, so there still could be a Democratic pickup out of Florida. But the statewide story in Florida continues to be, we can just show you here, in the senatorial race, Rick Scott leading 52,000 votes right now. Democrats do still have some vote to come in. No more out of Palm Beach here, but take a look in Broward. Democrats do still have some vote left. It's shrinking a little bit. In Miami-Dade continues to shrink as well. So still some opportunities for Democrats, but that is, over 50,000 votes there. That's the gap. And in the governor's race in Florida, you can see it here. It's still sitting at about 85,000 votes, a steeper hill to climb for Gillum still compared to Nelson. I mean, look, the story we're seeing here, the Democrats have made some gains. They've gotten some very good turnout, especially we showed you in Texas in those suburban areas. But I'm seeing it up here in the Florida Panhandle. I'm seeing it. We showed you in some of these counties where Donald Trump surged in 2016 and where you're getting similar performance tonight, 55-55 from the Republican. I'm seeing it here in Florida. I'm starting to look over in Texas, some of those core Republican areas, not swing areas, but those core Republican areas, that same Trump level of support, still seeing it there. And I think it's factoring into the results you're seeing here in Florida. And perhaps as Texas develops, we'll keep a closer eye on that. But I think a little bit there as well.
Steve, as we are looking at the Texas race, I want to bring us back to El Paso, actually. Chris Hayes is at El Paso headquarters for the Beto O'Rourke campaign. And as we've been watching those Senate numbers come in, the last numbers that we actually got, Chris, were within 100 votes. The tie is so close in terms of what we're seeing right now between Cruz and O'Rourke. We're also seeing the Texas governor's race has already been called very early for Greg Abbott. I don't think Chris can hear me. I can tell by the hand motion.
Yeah, I mean, it is very loud here, and there's lots of people streaming in. The Texas Democrats continue to feel pretty good about where things stand, particularly as it pertains to their House races, which again are sort of important bellwethers for them for the national race. In Harris County, he's still about where he needs to be, at least in the early vote. He came in about 123,000 plus. He's got to run up the score in those kinds of districts. And of course, the polls are going to close later here in Mountain Time in El Paso, which should be a pretty big bank of votes for him as well. But right now, there's a lot of energy here.
Chris, thank you. Chris Forrest at Beto O'Rourke headquarters. You can see as we've gone back and forth to Chris over the course of the night, you can see things filling in there.
Yeah, it's noisier.
Yes, for sure. I mean, these numbers, look at this.
Look at that.
49.7 to 49.7.
Come on.
We were just looking at a difference of less than 100 votes. Now it's a difference of 1,500 votes. But this is with less than 2/3 of the vote in. Chris made a good point there about the time zone in terms of polls closing completely across Texas. But this is just... I don't know. Is this the story of Ted Cruz? Is this the story of Beto O'Rourke? Or is this the story of a new Texas?
I think to Nicole's point, this tells the story of the lawn signs, and this also tells the story of the enormous unpopularity of Ted Cruz.
And of Donald Trump. Ted Cruz ran arm in arm with Donald Trump in a state that should be Donald Trump country. And if a Democrat can win in Texas, a Democrat can win anywhere. If Beto O'Rourke can beat a Trump ally like Ted Cruz, which is what Ted Cruz chose to become, he could have gone to the Senate and been I don't know, a Jeff Flake, could have been like the late John McCain. He certainly had enough differences on the campaign to have done so. He chose a different path. He locked arms with Donald Trump. He flattered him. I mean, he didn't just vote with him like all the other Republicans. He flattered him and kissed up to him. Beto ran a positive campaign. He went negative, I think, at one debate. He said he regretted it afterward. He called Ted Cruz Lion Ted, which was Donald Trump's nickname for him. Beto used it in a debate and then said he regretted it and talked to you about that. So he ran a positive campaign. He ran on the message President Obama closed on, that the character of the country is on the ballot. And if he prevails in deep, deep red Texas, it will be stunning.
Can I quote a former colleague in the Senate of Ted Cruz? He said, I don't dislike him as much as most of my colleagues do. I hate him.
People don't like, but I think the other thing we're seeing tonight, though, and Kornacki just pointed it out, we're seeing people come out to vote against Donald Trump, and we're seeing his people come out to vote for Donald Trump in large numbers.
Gene, on that, Steve has just disappeared around the corner. Now he's back. Steve, do you have a call?
Yeah, I am being told, and our board's being a little finicky here, but I'm being told that Colorado's 6th district, that our decision desk is now calling that for Jason Crow, the Democratic challenger against Mike Kaufman, the Republican incumbent. Again, this is one of those districts we can show you. I'm going to sound like a broken record here. A Hillary Clinton Republican-held district. Clinton won this district just outside Denver by a 9-point margin in 2016 through September into October. There had been multiple polls in this district showing Kaufman running pretty far behind. Republicans pulled out their financial support. National Republicans did at one point. So this is an expected development. But again, this speaks to one of the patterns I think we're seeing tonight. Republicans in Trump country seem to be digging in. The voters who didn't vote for Trump in 2016 seem to be digging in against his party now down ballot. This, if you go back to our list here of pickups, let's see if it's in there yet. It still isn't. We expect this to turn blue. I guess I can't even make it do that, but we'll be 1, 2, 3, 4 now. We'll have 4 districts turned blue, and they're all Clinton districts.
That Mike Kaufman district, the Democrats have been thinking they've been able to get that for the last 2 or 3 cycles, but it took Jason Crow to do it.
We're going to put some more wood on our graphics fire to develop more steam. We'll be right back. Another break for us. We'll come right back with more live results. We are back 3 minutes past the bottom of the hour, 9:33 Eastern Time. We have multiple storylines at this hour. I think that's safe to say.
Yes. Right now, I think that the big picture freakout that is genuinely bipartisan is the freakout in the Democratic Party that Beto O'Rourke might actually win Texas, and the freakout in the Republican Party that any Democrat might win a statewide race in Texas, which has not happened in the last 25 years.
And you're not even mentioning that.
In Florida, both the Senate race and the governor's race are too close to call. And look at how much percent of the vote is in. 98% of the vote in that Senate race. 50.4% for Rick Scott to 49.6% for Bill Nelson, a difference of just over 60,000 votes. We're also looking at a race that is too close to call in the Florida governor's race. Ron DeSantis at 50% of the vote, Andrew Gillum at 48.8% of the vote, a difference of just under 100,000 votes with 99% in, which means that DeSantis is in a slightly better position than Rick Scott is, but both of these races too close to call and coming down to the end of the wire.
And yet, if you're Chris Matthews, whose boss famously uttered, all politics is local when he worked for Tip O'Neill, if you ask Chris his lead story at this hour, Bucks County, Pennsylvania has gone down.
Can I go back about Beto? Because if Beto pulls this off, it shows courage works. And also excitement. And I've always thought that, being a moderate person, that sometimes you can edge your way into victory. But in these states like Texas, you got to come in with excitement. You got to get your base going. You got to come in like Reagan came in on the right. Yep. You can't sneak in and say, okay, I'm almost as good as a conservative Republican.
Bold colors, not pale pastels.
Well said. And I think that he came in, and he had the retail ability. We've seen politicians, all of us, who don't have it. I mean, there have been a lot of Democratic presidential nominees in recent years that don't have that personal touch.
Look at his opponent.
He's got it.
Start with
he has the opposite.
Yeah, he does not have the personal touch.
Listen, I have to say, in Ted Cruz's defense.
Oh, no. No, this is not.
We have been having a lot of conversations, a lot of jeering conversations, myself included, about how much everybody hates Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz knows that everybody hates him. There are a lot of Republicans who would love to be the senator from Texas, especially because Texas is seen as a place where you can be a senator for life, right? Ted Cruz was able to win a Texas Senate primary. He was able to get into that Senate seat. He did very, very well in the Republican presidential primaries against Donald Trump. He has never campaigned as a politician on being a guy who you'd like to be around. He has campaigned as a sort of world wrestling villain, right? Like, your hate makes me stronger. And so we're all talking about that like that's a weakness. Ted Cruz knows that he has a repellent personality. He's just turned it to his advantage. Up until now.
In his career, right. And
what has he ever lost before this?
Now he's up against a very attractive, charismatic candidate who has the X factor, who has it. Beto O'Rourke.
What if he lost the presidency to Donald Trump?
Everybody else did, too. We have a call. Actually, I want to get to.
Let's not forget, Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law doesn't hurt. Here's another projection in Colorado. Wow. All right.
Democratic Governor Jared Polis in Colorado is the projection from NBC News. I should tell you, there will be a number of firsts this evening. Jared Polis will be the first openly gay man to ever be the governor of an American state, and congratulations to him for that.
Mr. Kornacki has new numbers from Florida.
Yes, it is coming down to the final votes in Florida. You see statewide, they say 98% in. Let's take you through. It's getting very simple right now. The lead for Rick Scott in the Senate race sitting at about 63,000 votes and change. Okay, 63,000 votes. That's what Bill Nelson needs to make up. There's basically two places here that are left with outstanding vote. The biggest by far right here, the core Democratic county of Broward County. We believe there are, I'll put the math on the screen. In fact, it might be easier to understand this way. We believe there are 120,000 or so votes still to be counted out of Broward County. Now, if you run, about 70% for Nelson, about 30% of Scott, the rest of the way, that would mean that Nelson picks up about 48,000 votes in terms of plurality. He can get close to 50,000 out of Broward. So again, you go back to the statewide total. He's running 64,000 behind right now. Let me just make sure that didn't update while we were in there. He's running 64,000 behind, and he can get a bulk of that, a big chunk of that back from Broward. The other place, however, where there remains outstanding vote is right here on the Gulf Coast in Charlotte County. And again, you can see right here, Trump-ish numbers here for Rick Scott tonight, 61 to Trump 62 2 years ago. This is the other big place where you've got outstanding vote. Now, probably about 20,000 votes we're talking about here, so it pales by comparison to Broward. But that is the problem that Rick Scott faces. And you can see in the governor's race, if that's the gap there in the governor's race, it is much larger now, closing in on 100,000 votes in the governor's race with the same basic math. I can also tell you we have made another call now in the House. This one expected. We talked to you earlier in the night. Connor Lamb running in that newly created district here. Keith Rothfuss is a Republican incumbent. This is two incumbents who basically chose to run against each other in this new 17th district of Pennsylvania. Actually, if this district had existed in 2016, Trump would have won it by 2 points. But Lamb was leading in all the polling big. Republicans pulled out. This counts on the board as a Democratic pickup. This was officially a Republican district, the way they count these things. So you see there is another Democratic pickup. We think Colorado's 6. You don't see it here, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now. And you can see, again, as these counties, as these precincts, as these districts start to be processed by our decision desk. I told you about that House estimate we had earlier. Remember, the first time we checked in on it about, I'm thinking 45 minutes ago, it was a 65% chance that Democrats would get control of the House. It has now gone to 70%. Another reason it's gone up, I can tell you, that's not a pickup. They were telling me it's a pickup. It wasn't a pickup. But you could see a 70% chance now. Our decision desk is estimating that when all of these districts come in, Democrats will end up with a majority. Again, that number is subject to change as more of these come in. But you see the trend here, again, of these Clinton-held districts. If the Democrats came into tonight needing to flip 23 Republican seats, well, how many districts in the country are Republican-held and won by Hillary Clinton? The answer is 25. So if Democrats just get the lion's share of those, and that is basically where their pickups are tonight, if they get the lion's share of those, that either gets them there or gets them to the cusp of being there, and they only need a few others. So again, I think just seeing that success Democrats are having in those Clinton districts, part of the reason you're seeing that needle sit there at 70% right now.
Hey, Steve, can you fly me to two places, please? Nebraska, where we have a call for Fisher in the Senate race. There you go. We'll put it on up the side of the building. And can you take us out to Texas?
And on that Senate race, everybody wondering, let's see here, right now, Beto O'Rourke leading this thing. Wow, that is a 5,069 vote margin in Texas. Here's the big thing I think that's been happening in the last couple minutes. We are getting, so Harris County, largest county in the state, Houston, we are starting to get, sorry, that should, we should be getting the results there. Let's try that one more time. This thing's being that's being uncooperative. Well, the vote was coming in from Harris County. Unfortunately, I can show you the suburban county right outside of it, Fort Bend County. This is it's basically all in right now. You can compare this to 2016, an improvement there for Democrats, but you're seeing more improvement for Democrats off 2016 around Austin, around the Dallas area, also Beto O'Rourke's El Paso. That is not... having a few glitches here. We do have numbers from El Paso. I apologize. I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
Kansas governor?
Yeah, Steve, with the understanding that you are having some difficulty with the board, I'm still going to ask you to do something for me. Tell me if it won't work, but I would like to check in on a couple of governor's races, if you don't mind. Kansas, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Any of those giving us any substantial numbers?
Yeah, here you go. In Kansas, we do have substantial numbers. In Laura Kelly, the Democrat, remember, this is a three-way race. Greg Orman running as an independent, getting 6% of the vote. You see Laura Kelly right here leading right now with a substantial amount of the vote in. And you can see the big reason for this, Johnson County. This is geographically small. In terms of population, this is giant. This is the big bedroom community outside of Kansas City. This is traditionally was a Republican bastion. People who liked low taxes, but also maybe they were a little bit more moderate culturally. With Chris Kobach at the top of the ticket, this is a county that was already not so hot on the Brownback before him, but with Kobach at the top of the ticket, you can see big problems here for Republicans in a place they used to do a lot better. And if Kelly's running 20 points ahead in Johnson County, that portends big problems for Republicans across the state there. And I'm sorry, what was the other governor's race?
Michigan and South Dakota are the other ones I'm interested in.
Let's take a trip up here to Michigan. This is my first look at it too. Gretchen Whitmer, again, about half the vote coming in, leading here. And critically, you see no votes coming in so far from Wayne County, Detroit, biggest Democratic part of the state right there. South Dakota, where Democrats have not won a governor's election since 1974. Ooh, look at this. You got 75 votes, 65. Can I add 65 votes there, separating Kristi Noem from Billy Sutton.
I told you that was going to be a race. I told you that was going to be a race. That's amazing.
Yep, Mark Murray and I just talked about that race.
The governor's races tonight are going to be fascinating. Obviously, Scott Walker in Wisconsin is the great survivor of Republican politics, given what he's been through. Michigan, Bill Schuette, having been through his role as Attorney General in the middle of the Flint water crisis, among other things, bringing criminal charges like manslaughter charges against officials from the incumbent Republican administration. That Michigan race, super interesting. South Dakota, Iowa, Kansas. There's a whole bunch of races in the governor's, in terms of governor's contests tonight, where things just, you couldn't have guessed them before you got into seeing it between these candidates. It's just going to be a fascinating patchwork.
I've been asked to toss us to a quick break, and when we come back, we're walking on up to the 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast. We are expecting a number of calls when we come back. That is the meter showing the percentage chance of Democratic control of the House at this hour.
It
80%.
shakes because it's nervous.
Yeah, it's cold out there on the ice.
The Democrats need to pick up 23 seats in order to win control of the House of Representatives tonight. They came into tonight cautiously confident that they could do it. We have seen a lot of Republican incumbents who Democrats had targeted hold on, particularly in the state of Florida tonight, where the top of the ticket races for governor and Senate are both still too close to call. But that 23 number is still out there. That overall number Democrats are aiming for to try to take control of the House. Steve Kornacki is back with more from the House races, and including, I think, some that have just been called.
Yeah, we've got a couple more calls here clarifying the situation. A little bit. Clarifying maybe is the wrong word there. Remember, I said there were a handful of districts out there that are currently Democratic held that are potential Republican pickups, and one of them was pretty close to automatic. Well, the automatic one has now come in. This is the newly created 14th district of Pennsylvania. Again, under these newly drawn lines that the court imposed this year, this would have been a district Trump won by 30 points a couple years ago. So you got two first-time candidates here. The Republican wins it as expected, but this goes in the books as a Republican pickup. This is the only one of those Republican targets that was this automatic for them, but it's now gone official. So you've got that. Now compare that with the Democratic target list. We have a call there as well for you. It is the 3rd district of Minnesota. Eric Paulson, the Republican incumbent, losing to Dean Phillips in this race. And again, here it is. We've been saying this all night. Yet again, if I can get this button to work, I was going to dramatically show you. Well, okay. I'll tell you. How about that? This is a Hillary Clinton district. Hillary Clinton won this district in 2016. It re-elected rejected its Republican congressman, and now 2 years later, those same voters who rejected Trump are rejecting the Republican congressman in the same numbers. And it means, I can show you this list. The Clinton won GOP districts. Tonight we said there were 25 of them, 25 districts held by Republicans now that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. This is the story of the night on the Democratic side in the House. Look at this. The only races that have been called in this list of 25 Republican seats have flipped so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them have flipped. None of them so far have been called as Republican holds. So this is why when you see Democrats doing this well in this type of district, that if they run the table here, that alone gets them past that number. That is why this needle we've been talking about is still sitting there quivering at 80% confidence that Democrats are going to get the House. The story for them right now is that they are doing what they expected in these Clinton-held districts. The question is, can they expand it, and how much could they expand it beyond that? We told you technically they got one pickup of a Trump district with that Connor Lamb victory in Pennsylvania. But again, there are 25 total Clinton-held Republican seats, and so far Democrats are flipping them, and Republicans so far have not held a single one.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. I'm told James Carville is back with us, having joined us earlier. And James, we're mostly curious to hear what you make of the state of Texas. What do you think of this race tonight?
Well, it's Harris County versus the rest of the state. Now, when Steve gets the numbers from Harris County back up, I'm kind of anxious to see them, because before I came out on set, they didn't have anything reporting, and that's the biggest county in the state. But by the same token, Cruz is doing, very obviously very, very well in the rural counties. This is exciting. This is maybe the most exciting race we got right now. And I mean, win or lose, Beto O'Rourke's impact on Democratic politics and American politics is going to be profound. I mean, it's just something like this doesn't happen very often, I'll promise you.
We're flashing Harris County in a yellow box for those who can't automatically locate it as they look at the map.
16% in out of Harris County so far.
Yeah. That's good. That's good for Beto. That's good. That's the most populous county in the state.
Do you think it can happen, really?
I don't got to do a back of envelope calculation, but if I had to have votes them anyway, I'd sure like the fact that we got 84 left to go in Harris County. I don't know how they bundle up the early vote and count it or anything, but that if you were deficient in coming in with ballots, that would be the place you'd want to be. My guess is going to be pretty close, to be pretty exciting. And I also think the Midwest, I was a little disappointed in some things, particularly Florida, I'm sick about. But the Midwest looks like it might be pretty good for Democrats. If you look at that Minnesota seat, I don't know the Nebraska. I know we called it, and I wasn't in doubt, but it was 53. It might all be from Omaha, but that's not as strong. That strong a number for a Republican in Nebraska. We'll have to wait and see where it ends up. And there's encouraging reasons to think that the Democrat could get the House back. So I mean, it's going to be a thrilling night tonight. Like I said before. It's not going to be a wave, but it can still be a good election for Democrats.
Hey, James,
that's possible right now.
Hold that thought for 1 second. The number just went to 17 because we have a pickup. Steve Kornacki?
Yeah, here we go. Just a minute ago, we were telling you about that Kansas governor's race in the Democratic strength, I should say, in Johnson County. Well, that translates into this, the 3rd congressional district of Kansas, which contains Johnson County. Kevin Yoder, Republican incumbent. He has been defeated. We project that Sharice Davids will unseat him tonight. This will be a Democratic pickup. Here we go again in a district that was carried in 2016 by Hillary Clinton. Another Republican in a Clinton district, another suburban district goes down tonight. So this goes in the books as another Democratic pickup. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are now 7 Democratic pickups. Remember, we had that one that flipped as well from Democrat to Republican. So that's a net gain of 6 so far for Democrats. That leaves them 6 that they've gained. 17 that they still need to gain to get control of the House.
Let us just take a moment there to notice what just happened. I mean, Kevin Yoder losing that seat in Kansas is, first of all, a Republican losing a seat in Kansas. There's been a real question as to whether or not Chris Kobach's gubernatorial candidacy in Kansas might be sort of freaking Kansas Republicans out and hurting down-ticket Republicans, especially those who are allied with him. But Sharice Edwards winning that seat is a landmark landmark moment. She's Native American. She's openly gay. She's run an incredibly powerful campaign against him. Her taking that seat in Kansas speaks much bigger than that district. And it'll be fascinating to see what happens at the top of the ticket in Kansas. There's another dual-hatted role where Chris Kobach is both running the election and running for governor. A lot of voter suppression concerns in Kansas. He's running as Trumpier than Trump in terms of that gubernatorial race. He's running after Sam Brownback had such a difficult time in the governor's race, fiscally really destroying the state. That's a huge turn in Kansas.
I think Sharice Davids just became the first Native American woman to serve in the House of Representatives. I believe she did, which is an amazing thing. It's amazing that, how old is this country? You know, the people who were here before it was a country, but that's a really important first.
We have another pickup, Steve?
Yes, we do. I can tell you now, the 11th District of New Jersey has been called. This is a pickup for Democrats. Mikey Sherrill defeating Jay Weber here. This district, this is an open seat. Rodney Frelinghuysen, longtime Republican incumbent, elected in 1994, declined to seek re-election in this district. Mikey Sherrill, she raised millions of dollars nationally for this race. She's going to win this thing pretty easily. Now, this is not, technically speaking, a Clinton district. Donald Trump won this district by a point in 2016, but this has all the markings of these Clinton suburban districts. This thing swung very hard. If you went back to 2012, 2008, further back, this is Morris County, New Jersey. This used to be the heart of the Republican base in New Jersey. It's been trending towards the Democrats. That has accelerated in the age of Trump. I think Rodney Frelinghuysen saw this number after 2016. He had never run in a competitive race in his 24-year congressional career. That's why he didn't run. Mikey Sherrill has swooped in. She gets the pickup here for Democrats. So this is not actually a Clinton district pickup, but it is another pickup for Democrats. You can see now we got 8 of them for the Democrats on this list. They've lost that one in Pennsylvania because of the redistricting. Net gain of 7 so far knocks their magic number down to 16. And again, that is why our needle, it has moved again. It has moved to 90% right now that the Democrats will end up with at least 218 seats and with control of the House of Representatives.
And with Sharice Davids and Mikey Sherrill heading to the House of Representatives for Democrats, Democrats also have 2 big stars who are going to punch above their weight in terms of attracting attention, getting on TV and branding the Democratic Party.
Forgive me, James Carville, how's your meter running right now?
Well, you know, that meter drives me crazy, but I'm starting to like it a little bit. But I see it go more toward the blue. I wanted to throw something at it a little bit earlier. I think, we got to wait and see. There's a lot of politics left. There's a lot of California seats, and I'm getting a little more bullish on the Midwest here as the night goes on. So I'm feeling a little better than I did the first time I was on here, but. Let's wait and see how Harris County. Just keep it at 16%, 17% for right now.
I also want an accounting at the end of the night on veterans. This is the year of veterans. Running. Chris Kobach just went down to defeat in Kansas.
Really? Did you just get a call?
Yeah, we're calling it right now. It just arrived in my ear, to my mouth, to the side of the building.
Wow.
Laura Kelly.
Wow. Kansas. Okay, you guys, this is a big deal. Chris Kobach you have heard of because Chris Kobach became a figure in the Trump administration without ever officially joining it. He was brought to Washington to head up the voter fraud task force.
And how did they do?
They didn't find any, but they made a lot of noise. And then Chris Kobach narrowly eked out a win in a Republican primary to become the Republican candidate for governor in that state, while also simultaneously serving as Secretary of State. He really has pioneered, a lot of the modern Republican politics of voter suppression, and has put the hardest, raggedest racial edge on all of it with glee. And Kansas is a fairly conservative state, and Kansas just finished up a very hard time with Sam Brownback as their governor. Chris Kobach losing, and looks like he's losing big to Laura Kelly, just speaks volumes from Kansas. I know so many Kansas Democrats. I just happen to know a lot of people in Kansas who feel like they're blue dots in the Red Sea. And both that House race going to Sharice Davids and that governorship going to Laura Kelly is going to be seen as just as an epic moment for that
Interesting
state.
stuff happening in the middle of the country.
But the vote, I mean, there's so many Trump era debacles that we don't pay enough attention to the ones that are not as recent. But this voting commission that he ran, it wasn't just shut down by Democrats. I mean, no Republican states wanted to turn over their voter rolls either. Yeah. So this was one of those instances where out in the country, Democrats and Republicans roundly rejected what was clearly a blatant suppression effort.
Look at that graphic. That would indicate we have some poll closings coming up in 1 second. Here we are, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And a name you might recall from the modern history of American politics. That name is going to the U.S. Senate in Utah. Let's put it on the... Oh, we're trying. We don't have the board. Okay, we'll do this verbally. Mitt Romney is going to the U.S. Senate. There's the music, there's the building, there's the pan up, the stars, and Mitt Romney will be heading to the U.S. Senate as a freshman Republican. Imagine that. In Montana, the tester race, so many people curious about, they'll have to be curious for a bit longer. Too early to call. Ditto, Nevada, the Dean Heller race. Jackie Rosen's bid to unseat him, too early to call. Forgive the interruption.
That is going to be a fascinating race to watch unfold.
Back onto the ice. Thank you, skaters, for giving us the ice tonight. There are the undecided gray Senate seats and a meter of its own in yellow.
And I mean, the way to look at this, yes, there's the yellow undecided seats, but that's the floor that the two parties have in terms of how many seats they've already guaranteed. You see how close the Republicans are to guaranteeing a continued majority in the Senate, but it's going to be a tooth and nail fight for every one of those ones that is yet to be decided. Steve's got some more calls, I believe, in House races.
We've got a bunch of House races that just came in, and let me take you through these. First of all, the 2nd District of Virginia. This will be a Democratic pickup. Scott Taylor, Republican incumbent around Virginia Beach here. He is going to lose this one. This is not actually a Clinton district. Trump did win this district by 4 points 2 years ago. Scott Taylor, there was some local controversy around him with some allegations about his campaign. Taylor is going to lose this race tonight. We project that is a Democratic pickup. Also, this is one of those we said we expect. We just needed to actually get the votes in. One of these newly drawn Pennsylvania districts. This one, Chrissy Houlihan, the Democrat, is going to win. Now, remember, this used to be Ryan Costello. He's an outgoing Republican member of Congress. This was his district. I think he took one look at this remap and he said thanks, but no thanks. And so Chrissy Houlihan will be elected. We also have a call. This is the surprise of the night so far on the House side. Let me show you. This just came in as well. New York 11. Dan Donovan.
Whoa.
This is Staten Island and a touch of Brooklyn. Dan Donovan, Republican incumbent, has been unseated by Max Rose. This is fascinating because it is not a Clinton. It's New York City, not a Clinton district. There are parts of New York State and Staten Island in particular that like Donald Trump very much. This was one of them in 2016. 2 years later, Dan Donovan is losing here. We also have a call, I am told, in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania 7. This one, not a shock, but here it is. Susan Wild defeating Marty Nostine. Again, this was the seat that Charlie Dent held. Charlie Dent not running for re-election, changed a little bit through redistricting, became favorable there. Well, Clinton by a point. It was more Republican before that, but this is also a Democratic pickup. And so here is what the scorecard looks like. Count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Democratic pickups in the House at this hour. There's one seat that they've lost. Remember that Pennsylvania one. So a net gain of 11 for Democrats. That leaves 12 to go to get them the majority. That is why, with these calls coming in quickly, and especially a surprise one like that Trump district on Staten Island, that's why our decision desk's confidence that the Democrats will emerge tonight with a majority in the House has now increased to 95%. Remember, it started probably about 2 hours ago at 65%. When you're the Democrats and you start beating people like Dan Donovan and you start running up the score in those Clinton districts, that's what happens.
And another veteran, Max Rose, here in New York, platoon leader in Afghanistan. He made a very direct television commercial about heroin needles in the streets of Staten Island and the horrendous commute that most New Yorkers are forced into every day because from the Port Authority to all three governments surrounding, people have just stopped caring generally, and it has propelled him to victory.
Donovan,
the last Republican in New York City. Was he the last one?
Darn near. I mean, it's the only red spot visible from space.
And he was not somebody who had a national bullseye on him. He is not one of those people. His race, I think, because of him being in New York, he's seen as being always potentially vulnerable. Right. But he was not one of the people expected to go tonight.
You know, we haven't talked about all the retirements, but as the 2 years that Trump was president, every week there were Republican retirements.
Yes.
Republicans announced every week that they would not run for re-election.
Charlie Dent
was one of them. So a lot of these pickups, I think, are going to end up being Republicans that said, you know, basta.
Frequent guest on Hardball.
Yeah.
I mean,
Charlie Dent is a frequent guest on your show.
You know, I'm looking at that. I love that Staten Island. It's always been a bit of Bay Ridge, right?
Yeah, sure.
Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. Irish, Italian mainly, cops, firemen. What you said about the commute, that's an interesting issue.
Yeah, it is. What New Yorkers and New Jerseyans and folks from Connecticut are expected to endure. Bridge, tunnel projects that are going to stretch into the 2020s and beyond. Just repeated as a matter of this is what we have to live through. No one thinks anymore in terms of a big project. The what was it, the 405 in L.A. that they needed to shut down for a weekend. They prepared for it. They did it. It was an engineering feat. We don't think big like that anymore.
Well,
and it's the commuters.
Andrew got us the Tappan Zee, right? The new one.
Yes, but look at the Connect. Look at 287. You could lose a hubcap just driving 30
miles an hour.
I feel like I'm listening to Waze right now.
We've just stopped caring. We've stopped building the big projects and dreaming big.
And the tolls are, you know, more
you don't think $20 for the honor of going across the GW Bridge is appropriate?
Right, now that we've made it about me and my commute.
Let us go to a place where we've just praised the infrastructure, let it be noted. Our great friend Lawrence O'Donnell is in Southern California tonight, where Lawrence has been watching all of this in anticipation of California poll closings, which could be absolutely epic. Before we get to that point, though, Lawrence, how have you been watching tonight unfold, and what has struck you?
Well, I just want to remember that old phrase, as Staten Island goes, so goes the nation. Last week, I identified the Staten Island race as the one I was watching on the East Coast because it had a good chance of going Democratic with Max Rose running a flawless campaign on Staten Island. And Staten Island is the only Republican congressional district in New York City. It is a world apart from New York City. It is strangely of New York City, but so different from the rest of it. And so when you see that kind of change there, because Dan Donovan was a very, very solid Republican candidate. There was nothing wrong with his candidacy. He ran a solid Republican campaign. And so that win for the Democrats there tells me that where I am in California tonight is very likely to go something on the order of 7 Democratic seats for the Democrats, 7 pickups for the Democrats here, which is what the Democrats are targeting. That's what they have been targeting for all year, is picking up 7 here in California. If they do that with what you could reasonably anticipate them to pick up between Staten Island and California in the meantime, the Democrats would be solidly in control of the House of Representatives. And really, with Staten Island going, I don't see why these districts in Orange County that are in play won't also go to the Democrats. Everyone, I think Orange County is probably more famously Republican in national terms, but Staten Island is every bit as Republican as these Orange County districts. And so I think it's very, very likely that when we finally do get these results here, which will be well after 11 p.m. Eastern tonight, polls close in California at 8 p.m. tonight. We will be seeing, I think, the returns here confirming the kinds of flips we've seen starting on the East Coast.
And Lawrence, looking at some of the top of the ticket races that are so unexpectedly close, maybe we should have expected them to be this close. But in Florida and Texas, we've got incredibly close races. We do have a new call right now, though. Brian?
Kevin Cramer, the projected winner. Thank you so much. North Dakota Senate. No, that's okay. I was going to.
Can I throw this at you?
Here's the problem for the Dems. There were a lot of Democrats secretly, quietly holding out hope that, especially as Native Americans found a workaround to an effort to suppress their votes, that maybe Heidi Heitkamp might find a route to the finish. It was not to be tonight.
No, Heidi Heitkamp, the numbers were absolutely against her. Heidi Heitkamp running for re-election in a state where Donald Trump won by 36 points.
Yeah.
She won that seat 6 years ago by less than 3,000 votes, based in significant part by very, very strong support from Native American voters. Since then, the Republican-led state government passed a law that essentially makes it very difficult for Native Americans to cast votes.
Starting with what's your street address?
Yeah, North Dakotans who are Native American, who live on rural reservations, don't tend to have street addresses. They decided that it would be a rule that you had to have a street address on your ID in order to vote. It was a clearly suppressive effort targeted at 30,000 or so Native American voters. It's a very difficult national story. It's a civil rights story that will linger on for a long time after these results have resonated. But whether or not those votes would have been enough to keep Heidi Heitkamp in the Senate, she has lost her seat tonight.
And that's a net gain for the Republicans, net loss for the Democrats. It's not one of these seats that is a wash.
That's right. Now, I want to go back to Lawrence. We were talking about some of these races that are very close tonight, both in Florida, both Senate and governor, and the Senate race of Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke in Texas. What's your take on those, Lawrence?
Well, having been to Texas and watching that O'Rourke campaign, I would have been surprised if he wasn't really close and really taking this down to the wire, because anyone who saw him campaign in Texas knew that we were seeing nothing like anything we've seen in a Democratic campaign in Texas. And you remember the last elected Democratic senator in Texas was Lloyd Bentsen. And Lloyd Bentsen it was as if the president of your local bank was running for Senate with all of the charm. Lloyd Bentsen was a solidly capable senator in terms of legislation and the technical specifics of legislation. He was the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, as a very powerful senator, but he was not a gregarious campaigner. He was not a no necktie, stand on the back of the pickup truck campaigner like Beto O'Rourke is. And so what we've seen there is just an extraordinary campaign of an individual with extraordinary political talent and an ability to carve out his own policy positions without taking dictation from Washington or taking talking points from anyone. And there's probably not many Democrats in the country who would agree with Beto O'Rourke's position on every single issue right down the line. But he's carved a space that is so appealing that there's, wherever Democrats find some slight disagreement with him, it feels very minor compared to the way they agree with him.
Lawrence O'Donnell, waiting out the poll closing times in California, which we're in within
Rachel,
an hour
can I get
now?
in one word about Heidi Heitkamp?
Oh, sure, please.
Because I just want to say this one thing. This is how extraordinary this is. I worked in the Senate for 7 years. I never once in my time in the Senate saw a United States senator cast a vote that senator knew could decisively defeat that senator in the re-election. And
we have a big call. This is out of Texas. NBC News is projecting Ted Cruz will return to the Senate from Texas, and Republicans will be guaranteed control of the Senate as a result.
Let's go to Chris Hayes, who is in El Paso at Beto O'Rourke headquarters. Chris Hayes, we've been going back to you all night long as we've been watching this almost unbelievably close race unfold. NBC now projecting that Ted Cruz will be reelected. I got to ask you about how it feels in the room and whether or not people in the room have absorbed that call.
I don't think they have absorbed it at all, to be totally honest. Loud music playing, it's filled. I mean, someone earlier tonight, a Texas Democrat who's elected, described the math in Texas like being in a prison and trying to get up over the wall. He said you could try a million different ways. It's a tall wall and it's really hard. And Beto has done a lot to get up over that wall. It looks like he's going to fall short. I also just talked to a Texas source who said already it's the best night, just extremely devastated, moribund Texas Democratic Party. I think there's generally a fairly optimistic feeling, even with Beto coming short in the Senate race.
Chris Hayes in El Paso at Beto O'Rourke headquarters. Well, you guys, we have been talking about this all night, about how remarkable it is that Beto O'Rourke would get this close. For it to be called at this point, after watching it on such a knife edge, feels like a blunt ending to this. But let's go to somebody who knows this stuff inside and out. Evan Smith is the CEO of the Texas Tribune and joins us just as we're absorbing this news. Smith, thanks very much for being with us. We know this is an incredibly critical night in Texas. Let's get your top-line reaction to how Beto O'Rourke did in this race against Ted Cruz. Again, NBC now projecting that Cruz will be reelected.
Well, I'm a little stunned. I'm absorbing it myself. I've been stunned all night, though, that the race was this close. I thought that Cruz was going to win this race pretty much all along, but would win it by mid-single digits or high single digits. Understand that Republicans typically win statewide races in Texas by 15 or 20 points. So the fact that Beto O'Rourke was going to get it this close was the news going into today. Getting it to a point or two or three, whatever it ends up being, is really an extraordinary feat in a state that has not been hospitable for Democrats going back to Ann Richards. And what you heard Chris say is true. He will lose, but Democrats will have a fantastic night. They'll pick up a double-digit number of seats in the Texas House. They'll win some congressional seats. There are statewide races that have no business being close, that are tight as a tick right now. So it's a good night for Democrats, even if Beto O'Rourke loses.
Evan, do you think that the gains that O'Rourke made in terms of voter registration and turnout and organizing are things that will be Beto-specific, or do you think that the Texas Democratic Party is nimble and able enough to be able to lock those in and keep those people both Democratic and voting in future elections?
Too early to tell. How much of this is about Beto versus how much of this is about the political environment becoming more favorable to Democrats? A lot of talk every 4 years about how Texas is going to turn blue. Mostly that's been hype. There's been no evidence of that up until this cycle. He is a singular candidate. He is so much more articulate and empathetic, talented as a campaigner, connects with people, energetic. I think it's very hard to come behind him and replicate what he's done. Not to say it's impossible, but if you held me at gunpoint and said, who is the candidate who can be the next Beto, I'd have a hard time giving you even one name of somebody who could possibly do what he did.
Evan, this is Gene Robinson. What are you seeing of the Latino vote in Texas, which would seem to be key to any sort of real rebirth of the Democratic Party?
As you know, the Latino vote in Texas has historically underperformed the African-American vote, and especially the Anglo vote as a percentage of those eligible to turn out. Anecdotally, what we're hearing tonight is that Latinos turned out in greater numbers than they have of late. There was a lot of concern coming out of the primary that Beto O'Rourke might not be energizing Latino voters in a way that Wendy Davis did not exactly energize Latino voters 4 years ago. We'll have to take a look at the numbers and see. The reality is that the Latino vote has been so small in Texas over the last couple of cycles that even if you're a Democrat and you overperform, the numbers are not enough to overcome the embedded Republican advantage. We'll have to see what they say.
Evan, you just mentioned that Democrats may pick up some seats tonight in Texas, even as Beto appears to fall short. We are just able to project right now that longtime Texas Republican Congressman Pete Sessions, who I believe is an 11-term incumbent, has just lost his seat to Colin Allred, the Democrat who was challenging him there. NBC News now projecting that result. I have to ask if that's a surprise to you, Evan.
It's not a surprise. Dallas County has been described to me by Republicans as an absolute disaster for Republicans. Sessions is the largest nesting doll. Inside the Sessions doll are Texas Senate and Texas House seats, and everybody is going down in Dallas County if they're a Republican tonight. Dallas County has gotten progressively more blue over the last several election cycles. Sessions was the most endangered Republican. It is not a surprise that he's lost.
Evan, I was talking to a kingmaker in the Democratic Party today who was talking about the future of Beto should he win the election today, and he couldn't run for president right away, but now he is available to run. Is it outside the realm of possibility that Beto O'Rourke, coming off of this near miss, will run for president?
Well, he didn't want to talk about it until after this race. He was planning on going to the United States Senate, and he had committed to serving for 6 years, so he didn't entertain the conversation. You know and I know, Chris, there will be drumbeats about this guy for the next 2 years because he energized people not just in Texas but around the country in a way that was really quite remarkable. Could he do it? Does he have the experience to do it? Does he have the national profile to do it? We really don't know. I think what he'd like to do, probably, if he does lose this race, is go back to El Paso for a while and chill out, and then we'll entertain the conversation at that point. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. Who knows?
Thanks, Evan.
Evan Smith with the Texas Tribune, really appreciate you being with us tonight, which we continue to absorb this big news. Again, underscoring the major call that we just made in the Texas Senate race, which was such an object of national fascination. Beto O'Rourke appears to have fallen short in his effort to unseat Ted Cruz, a Republican incumbent U.S. Senator winning re-election in any other year would not even be something that would make TV. It's the one kind of sort of thing that you wouldn't even think needed to be discussed tonight. Beto O'Rourke kept it close enough that we brought it until after the 10 p.m. Eastern hour before this was called for Ted Cruz. Again, also, there has been a House call in Texas while we were having that discussion with the editor from the Texas Tribune. Longtime incumbent Republican Texas Congressman Pete Sessions has just lost his seat to Democrat Colin Allred, who's an ex-NFL player and a very charismatic candidate in his own right. Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, and another call, too, just coming in the 11th district in Michigan. This Haley Stevens, a Democrat. This is a pickup, calling her the winner in this district. This one, not one of those Clinton districts. Actually, this is one of those districts Donald Trump did fairly well in 2016. One of the reasons he was able to win Michigan. But tonight, Haley Stevens, the Democrat in this open seat, is picking that up. Also, we can show you in that Texas district, you're talking about the 32nd Pete Sessions going down. This is another one of those Clinton districts. A Clinton suburban district, a long-serving Republican, as you say, being defeated there. So you start to add all these together, 11, 12, 13, 14 Democratic pickups right now, balanced against that one loss that they had, that one loss seat they have. That is a net gain of 13. Their magic number sits at 10 right now. 10 more to go. They get House control. They're sitting at 95% in our meter. And one more thing, just if you check in on this category we've been tracking, Clinton won districts that came into tonight held by Republicans. Look at this. There has not been a single Republican call. Republicans have not been called the winner in a single one of these districts tonight. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 Democratic pickups in there.
So, Steve, let's just reiterate. Right now, with Texas winning the...
Here we go.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. That's okay.
That's all right.
For the Democrats, this is ball game. NBC News is predicting the Democrats will control the House of Representatives. It's been a night of victories, and it's been a night of some painful losses for the Dems, but this, of course, hands a vital branch of government to the opposite party.
To be clear, with Texas Senate going to Ted Cruz, NBC is projecting that the Republican Party will hold the Senate. NBC is now projecting that the Democratic Party will hold the House. So this means divided control on Capitol Hill. There's a lot of other races to cover over the course of this evening, including a lot of fascinating governor's races. But in terms of overall control of the two houses of Congress, at this point, it looks like we know how that big part of the story is going to end.
Nicole Wallace, for the federal bench, you need the Senate. But for the investigations and the scrutiny that this administration will not welcome, you need the House.
Listen, this is everything. I mean, Democrats have been out of the ballgame. They've been incapable of doing what the Republicans were unwilling to do because they didn't control either the Senate or the House. And this changes everything. Adam Schiff is now the chairman of the House Intel Committee. We now have a branch of government who can try to answer the question that Robert Mueller is investigating, what role Russia had in the 2016 election. We have a president who is interested in the answer to that question. You now have Democrats able to subpoena and investigate a government that, by the White House's own admission, has had some very corrupt cabinet secretaries. The dude in tactical pants who was so corrupt, even the Trump White House fired him. I mean, this is a game changer. This changes Washington. This changes life for the White House staffers. And this changes Donald Trump's life immediately.
Elijah Cummings is the chairman, likely incoming chairman of the House Oversight Committee. We were talking about him the other night off camera when we were all here on Sunday night. Elijah Cummings I think is almost without equal in terms of the quality of his staff work, the vision with which he approaches his responsibilities, and the ability, just the sheer competence with which he approaches his role on that oversight committee. He and other Democrats on that committee have asked, over the past 2 years, they have requested 64 subpoenas related to oversight matters with the Trump administration. The Republicans had none of it. They wouldn't approve any of them. All of those will now be approved by Elijah Cummings. And that means, that means Ryan Zinke's life is about to get a lot harder.
He's not the guy in the pants. Who was that guy?
That was Scott Pruitt.
Sorry.
Scott Pruitt was under criminal investigation by the time he left.
Can you imagine? So just go back, Pruitt. If you had a Democratic-controlled House, we would have gotten to the bottom of the $80,000 phone booth he wanted, his bulletproof desk. I mean, there have been people who have not just squandered the taxpayer dollar, but there's been outright corruption in the Trump cabinet.
Stolen the taxpayers' money.
Democrats haven't had any power to investigate or subpoena. That ends tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, and we know from our conversation with Adam Schiff the other night that these incoming chairmen, they've kind of figured out how they're going to approach this. They seem to have a step-by-step game plan. They know who's going to do what, who's going to look where. So I think they'll hit the ground running.
I think the treasure hunt for Donald Trump's tax returns is on its way. And I think that we heard the other night, we were together on Sunday night, somebody at Ways and Means chair, somebody's going to go for it and they're going to get it. The subpoena is ultimately the powerful tool.
There was a discussion yesterday as to whether or not Kellyanne Conway violated the Hatch Act at a campaign appearance. And it kind of rose and died within an hour on social media because it was just too much. It was futile to even have the conversation because it was thought there's no governing body that will give us satisfaction.
I worked in a White House, a Republican White House, with a Democratic-controlled House, and I turned over my emails 6 times. They investigated the Enron scandal. They investigated the Energy Task Force. They have no idea what's about to happen. They will all have lawyers. They will all turn over their emails. And the winner is the taxpayer. The winner is the citizen. We will now have the ability for at least one chamber of Congress to get the answer to questions that the Trump White House has been unwilling to answer, that every other White House has had to answer for. And you know, the Russia investigation is very much in danger. I talked to folks sort of familiar with the biorhythms of the Justice Department. They don't know whether to pack or charge. You know, are they packing up their offices, or are they getting ready to charge more criminals in the Russia investigation? So you look at how, and I was reminded today by a former national security official, no one ever passed legislation to protect Robert Mueller. So that investigation very much in question, it's really important for the country, for Democrats and Republicans. Everyone should be thankful that Democrats now control the House.
Didn't it strike you as odd the other night? Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who has not held many briefings in the last several months,
rally.
Shows up at a rally, a public employee paid for by the taxpayer, showing up there huckstering for the president. I've never seen that
White
before.
House staffers were not allowed to go inside political events. They had to hold. I used to travel with Steve Hadley, who was the national security advisor, because if something happened and George W. Bush was campaigning, he had to be able to talk to his national security advisor. But he went from the plane to the car to a backstage. Well, he was never seen. I have never seen White House staffers in public at a political event.
When we were speechwriters, you had to take leave.
Right.
To write speeches for the campaign.
I was an intern, and I was told that you had to excise yourself from a conversation if anyone brought up electoral politics, and for God's sake, don't use the phone to conduct an intern.
It's crazy.
The George W. Bush administration, you and I think, like each other very much, and we are actual friends off camera, and we disagree strongly about the overall legacy of the George W. Bush administration. But I will hereby concede you this. For everything that I ever thought was wrong and terrible about the George W. Bush administration, and I can read you chapter and verse on every indictment that there was.
A book about it.
I really can. I really can. I will tell you, we have just had a midterm election that ends tonight where the president has his campaign chairman, his deputy campaign chairman, his national security advisor, and his personal lawyer all awaiting sentencing on felony charges. The president is the subject of an active special counsel investigation that is of a counterintelligence and criminal nature that has produced over 100 felony indictments already. Gerald Nadler is the head of the Judiciary Committee now, and everybody says, oh, that's where impeachment comes from. No, that's where the action comes from to protect the Robert Mueller investigation, to make sure that it comes to an end. Devin Nunes will now dissolve back into obscurity. He will hold his seat tonight in California. He will maybe he'll pick up farming since he's been faking it all this time. But Adam Schiff, as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, is not just going in there as a Democrat. Adam Schiff is going in there as one of the most you all know this, one of the most talented intellects we've ever seen in modern politics. Adam Schiff.
Oh yeah.
The way he approaches an issue, I mean, wouldn't you be terrified to have him as a professor? The grade curve in his class would be like F to a D minus. Like you'd never catch up with him.
Here's the other thing. Adam Schiff will have the ability to do what none of the Republicans on the Intel Committee have done, is to actually protect the Justice Department and the FBI. When the Justice Department and the FBI went to Paul Ryan and Devin Nunes and said, please don't release these classified materials, please don't release the Nunes memo, please don't release the FISA applications, which have sources and methods in them. Paul Ryan and Devin Nunes, the Republican speaker and the Republican chairman of the Intel Committee, said, pound sand, FBI head, pound sand, DOJ. The Justice Department, the Republican appointees at the Justice Department and the FBI, their lives get better tomorrow.
Just to check in with one of the subplots tonight, and an open request through our control room. I would love an accounting of women elected thus far tonight and veterans elected thus far tonight, even though the night is young.
Can we have governors? Governors? We have governors?
Governors, sure.
Just pop on.
Wisconsin governor is I think we have it as too close to call. We also have, we were talking about Scott Walker, one of the great survivors, however tonight goes, one of the great survivors in American Republican current day politics. Evers up 50-48 in this race. Hugh Hewitt standing by at Walker headquarters. Hugh, you've perhaps been listening to the conversation. It's Charlie Sykes. The error is mine. I apologize. Charlie, you're no Hugh Hewitt. Charlie, you've been listening to the conversation there in your home state.
I can see the thought bubble.
Yeah, I know. I'll have to settle this with Charlie when I see him. You've been listening in your home state of Wisconsin, surrounded by home state Republicans. Give me the headline for tonight.
Well, the headline for tonight is that, despite the lack of a blue wave around the country, in the upper Midwest, Democrats are running the table. And the night started with a very quick call for Tammy Baldwin, who is winning re-election by more than 10 points. And right now, Scott Walker is behind. And look, I was here in this room 8 years ago when the Republican wave started and Wisconsin flipped so dramatically. But there's no question about it. This crowd here is looking for some good news. And one of the reasons why they're playing the music so loud is because they didn't want to play the Tammy Baldwin acceptance speech. But there's a lot of nervousness. And obviously, Walker does not want to see the numbers where they are right now. This would be a big pickup for Democrats. And it would be consistent with what you're seeing happen in a lot of these Rust Belt states.
If it is a pickup for Democrats, Charlie, what will the Walker obituary read? What will that first paragraph read?
Well, that he survived recalls, he survived protests, but he couldn't survive Donald Trump in 2018 because the economy is strong here, taxes are here, but the headwinds of Trump here in Wisconsin were just too much. And it is interesting, Leah Buchmer, who lost for Senate, ran very much as a Trumpian candidate. She linked herself to Trump. Walker tried to run on his own record, but at least in Wisconsin, that was too much. It was uphill.
Charlie, this is Rachel in New York. I just wanted to ask you to reflect for a little bit on the sort of the end of this Republican triumvirate in Wisconsin. I mean, we'll see what happens with Governor Walker tonight, but with Paul Ryan leaving as Speaker of the House, retiring, he looks like he will now be succeeded by Nancy Pelosi, as it looks like the Democrats are poised to retake control of the House. With Reince Priebus having left the RNC and become White House Chief of Staff and now ended that in whatever status he ended that in. And now Scott Walker potentially losing his seat tonight in Wisconsin. Those three huge Wisconsin Republicans. I wonder if you could talk about that as the sort of, should we see that as a sort of an end of an era?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we used to joke about cheesehead domination here. And again, in 2020, no state flipped as decisively from blue to red as Wisconsin. I mean, they, flipped the governorship, a U.S. Senate seat, a congressional seat, both houses of the legislature. And really, if Governor Walker does not win tonight, that really does come to an end. And again, you're exactly right. That triumvirate, these guys all knew one another. They were very good friends with one another. They worked well with one another. And it's possible by the end of the night that they'll all be gone.
Charlie Sykes, editor-in-chief of Right Wisconsin. Not at all Hugh Hewitt by any stretch of the imagination.
He is so not
Hugh Hewitt. There's not any you or Hewitt. Thank you, Charlie.
Now I owe Charlie the meal of his choice in New York City for calling him Hugh Hewitt.
Thanks, Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since we did an accounting of the other important races for tonight, and that is governor's races. Let's run the board, starting in Michigan with a Democratic pickup tonight. Whitmer is going to the State House. And in New Mexico, the Dems have picked up the seat with Grisham becoming the governor-elect. In Arizona, this is the incumbent, Doug Ducey, returning. In New York, We hardly even talked about this, Mario. Cuomo token 20% opposition tonight, going back to Albany. I'm sorry?
Andrew, not Mario.
Andrew, thank you.
Yep, sure.
Boy, you know, names are becoming tough at this hour. In Nebraska, Governor Ricketts going back. In Alabama, Ivey, the incumbent, going back. In Oklahoma, Stitt, this is a GOP hold. In South Carolina, McMaster, you have seen the president campaigning for the incumbent Republican Governor McMaster. Wyoming, GOP hold, Mark Gordon, the governor-elect. In Vermont, the incumbent Governor Scott headed back. And let's go into too close to call. South Dakota, Kristi Noem staying within a couple points. Billy Sutton in Florida, too close to call. We've talked about this a lot tonight. In Georgia, too early to call, much to Rachel's frustration.
3/4 of the vote in Georgia. It's killing me.
Do you want to introduce our guests?
Yes.
We have guests.
Introduce our guests.
Steve Kornacki, first of all, before you can meet our guests. I'm being corrected by the control room. We can't talk about our guests. Steve Kornacki, what do you have?
We can give you an update on that Georgia situation here. Too early to call. The guidance we're getting from our decision desk on this is, remember, Georgia, it is a runoff state. There's no one will win the governorship tonight unless they finish with a clear majority, 50% plus one. You can see the margin Kemp has right now with a lot of votes still outstanding around Atlanta. That's the delay. Our decision desk thinks he's likely to get over that number, but they don't know for sure yet, so we are waiting to see a little bit more out of there. But I can show you, even with Kemp leading statewide, and again, this is a story we've been seeing everywhere, these Republican areas really coming through for him. Around Atlanta, the theory of the Abrams campaign, this is the county that I think I said was going to tell the story. Until 2016, this county had never voted Democratic in a presidential race. Gwinnett County, one of the largest in Georgia. It is rapidly growing, rapidly diversifying. And now Stacey Abrams right now leading this thing by 13 points. We said it might have a ripple effect in the House if she performed here, if she exceeded Hillary Clinton's margin. Check this out. The 7th District of Georgia right now, Republican incumbent Rob Woodall is trailing his Democratic challenger. The reason he's trailing his Democratic challenger is 80% of this district is Gwinnett County. So if the turnout is up, if the Democrats are doing better there, that could translate into a pickup for them in Georgia that you could say maybe would, if it holds, would be powered by Abrams, even if she loses statewide. Quickly, I also want to show you, we said there might be some Democratic pickups tonight, completely out of left field, so to speak, that were not on our watch list, maybe not even on our long watch list. Well, there may be one on the verge of coming in. Let me take you deep into red America. This is Oklahoma's 5th congressional district, and look at this. Nearly all of the vote has been counted, and Republican incumbent Steve Russell right now is running 2,600 votes behind Kendra Horn, his Democratic challenger. Where the heck is the 5th district of Oklahoma, you ask? Well, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County is the official name there, accounts for 95% of the district. You can see almost all the vote is in there. Kendra Horn getting 52%, 2 very small counties. All the vote counted right there, and there is still some outstanding vote here. So I think Steve Russell may be able to get a margin of, I don't know, about 500-600 votes out of Seminole County with a little bit left here. And you see overall, he is trailing in this thing by a couple thousand votes. So Kendra Horn, a Democrat, may be on the verge of unseating Steve Russell in the 5th district of Oklahoma. This is, by the way, this was a 13-point Trump district. This is the only district in Oklahoma Democrats could ever dream of taking. They may do that tonight.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you.
Can we ask you, Steve, about one actual other race, Arizona 2? The Arizona 2nd congressional district. Do we have, by any chance, a call in that race or any projection on what's going on there?
Yeah, let's take a look here. Well, let's go out to Arizona, as a matter of fact, and let's call it up. Yes, Ann Kirkpatrick, the Democrat. This was their sort of dream recruit in this district. Martha McSally vacating the seat to run for the Senate. We have now called her a victor here, and again continues that theme we've been talking about here. Clinton district. Democrats picking up another Clinton district, so that goes into the column as well. And just to check in on that column, we've been keeping tabs on tonight. Look at this still. Oh, and one more. Carlos Curbelo, Florida 26, Republican. Wow. He has conceded defeat. He is going down tonight in that district. Again, Hillary Clinton won this thing by 16 points in 2016. Republicans had hoped he could pull it out, but no. So another Republican losing in a Clinton district.
Wow. So many of these coming in. And at 11 o'clock, roughly 20 minutes from now, we have California closing, so we're going to have a lot of news. Another quick break for us. Our live election returns continue after this. Eastern time as we approach the 11 o'clock Eastern time, indicating the polls closing in California. This is the lead story at this hour, and that is control of the House of Representatives, projected by NBC News to be in the hands of the Democrats when this is all over. That is our projection of the margin at the end of the night. And then there is the Senate, a decidedly different story tonight. And for Democrats, some squeakers, some heartbreakers. Republican control will remain in the U.S. Senate. Here is our projected, so far, map of the seats, Republican control, though, as we've been saying, it's the gray seats that are in question tonight that we will have answers on before the end of the evening.
So the total number of Senate seats held by the Republicans still to be determined, but the NBC News projection is that it will be status quo in the Senate, that the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, will be the Senate president. But in the House, all change. The new Speaker of the House, according to NBC News projections, will be Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is the most powerful woman in the history of American politics. She is the only woman to have ever served as Speaker of the House. She will now return to that role. Not only will Nancy Pelosi be Speaker, but this means that there will be Democratic chairs of every committee in the House, with everything that entails in terms of oversight and accountability for this new presidential administration. And we have some news on that front. Our friend Ari Melber has been doing some reporting in terms of what to expect now that the Democrats seem assured of control in the House. Ari.
That's right, Rachel. I've spoken to a senior Democratic source on the Ways and Means Committee who says tonight, breaking news, they do intend to request President Trump's tax returns. That's important because, as you know and as we've reported, this is something that does not require the Senate. It does not require even a full House vote. Under federal law, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee has the power to request anyone's tax returns. They believe that includes flatly the President of the United States. So this is coming to us now. We're seeing the ramifications of Democrats on these committees who have this kind of power. This is Rep. Richard Neal. This is the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee who would become chair if our projection holds that they are basically Democrats taking over the House. Getting your hands on those Trump tax returns, as everyone knows, would be a big deal for the committee. It doesn't mean they would automatically become public, but it does mean the Democrats are coming out swinging tonight. They're not waiting. They're putting this marker down right now, and I'm reporting this for the first time on MSNBC. They intend to request the returns, and this senior source tells me this is something that Pelosi is in on.
Now, Ari, when you say they will be requesting the president's tax returns, they're not requesting them from the president. They'll be requesting them from the IRS. Does the IRS have to say yes?
That's the question. This is federal law, as you say, 266103. And it's important that it's not Donald Trump personally making this decision, but it is, as you say, the Trump administration through the IRS. The options are to say yes and hand them over, or to fight it. And I am told, again, by the sources on the Ways and Means Committee, that if it's a fight they want, it's a fight they'll pursue. Not to get out too into the weeds, Rachel, but what that would mean is if the IRS under the Trump administration says no, then the House's move would be to try to take it to court. And you have a federal law that seems to say flatly they can request it. Then you'd have the courts adjudicate whether there's some reason legitimately for the IRS to say no.
Wow. So this is a declaration, as Laurie says, from a senior source with information about the plans of the Ways and Means Committee under what would be the new chairman, Richie Neal, congressman from Massachusetts. Ari, thank you very much.
Bet.
That's dramatic news.
It is indeed. And we have two guests here with us who can talk about that. Donna Edwards is a former Democratic member of the House of Representatives from the great state of Maryland. And Stephanie Ruhle, all our viewers should know already because she anchors at least 2 shifts a day, sometimes maybe more on this network. Welcome to you both. Congresswoman, a question about style. Should some Democrat have just done that? Say nothing of the ink isn't dry. We don't have these races done and dusted yet. This is a projection of House control by the Democrats. Is that the right look by the Democratic Party to, before this night is over, start making noise about the president's tax returns?
Well, I think that it's really important for Democrats to begin to set the table and to set the table for governing. And some of that is going to mean investigations.
I think they're halfway
inquiry.
Through dinner already, yeah.
But the other part of that is going to be, how do we govern? How do we do things that people voted for? They voted on health care and the economy and finding jobs and building roads and bridges where they don't damage their cars. And I think that Democrats are going to have a twofold strategy. And if it looks like they're just investigating everything, I think that's a really bad look for the party. And so I would urge them to think about the important investigations and then to move on from that to legislating. And even though it means that it may not go through the Senate and it may not get to the White House, it begins to set the table for 2020 and says affirmatively, these are the kinds of things that we're for.
Are you certain Pelosi gets reelected by her caucus?
Absolutely. And if I were in Congress today, I'd vote for her, because one thing that you don't want in an environment like this, with a report coming from the Mueller investigation, is you don't want somebody who's not seasoned, somebody who hasn't been in the fight. And I think Nancy Pelosi has done that. I don't think she should be there forever. Neither do I think all of the rest of the leadership should be there forever. But this is a really important moment to have her, and I'd cast a vote for her.
But, Brian, look at a lot of these Democrats who are winning. They are new faces. They are young Democrats. You look at the Future Forum. This is sort of like the Problem Solvers Caucus within the Democratic Party, within the House. 28 members in their 40s or younger. They endorsed 45 candidates. Already 7 have won. And these are millennial-minded. And even though, yes, Nancy Pelosi, without a doubt, is the woman on top, when you look at the faces of these candidates who are winning, you are seeing the response coming from young people who are voting, saying, I'm tired of the status quo and I want something different. But it is stunning. Look at the people who are winning. We knew it was a record number of women running. Whether you're talking Michigan, Kansas, or a number of other states, it's extraordinary to see this.
Stephanie, can I just ask you from a financial perspective, because you are often the person who gives me advice on these things, to the extent that the president's tax returns are not just a prize, but are relevant to a potentially substantive investigation. As you were saying, Congresswoman, the Democrats shouldn't be out there saying, we're going to go get everything we can. They should be targeted and deliberate in what they're going after. If Congressman Neal, as chair Ways and Means, decides to get the president's tax returns, decides to fight that fight, what investigations, what potentially substantive matters are they relevant to? Obviously, there's the issue that, we used to have a norm that candidates disclose their taxes. He didn't. That's one thing. But what would they find in his taxes that would be relevant to real oversight?
So if we're actually looking at what the president is doing, especially as what Robert Mueller is looking into, the president loves to say, I never invested in Russia. Well, no one thought you did. The question was always, are you financed by Russian oligarchs?
Russia invest in you. Yeah.
President Trump never had any U.S. bank finance him. And so you've got to ask the question, well, who's putting that money up? So if we saw his taxes, we would know something like that. But to your exact point, Democrats have to be strategic. As they're calling for it right now, they're putting on a show because they certainly want to see it. But from the New York Times reporting, they reported extensively what they could for a year and a half. We could find out he's just extraordinarily cheap, fantastic at abusing loopholes, which is far beneath what our moral leaders should do. But Donald Trump will turn around and say, well, that's what makes me clever.
Does anyone here not think his tax returns have been on Robert Mueller's desk for 9 months?
I for certain believe that Robert Mueller already has the tax returns. And so then the question for Democrats is, what is it that they could explore with those tax returns that goes above and beyond, maybe related even to emoluments, for example, which might be a relevant inquiry. But I think Democrats need to be very, very strategic about what it is that they decide to investigate in this time, because I'll tell you, the president, you can say what you want about him, but he will exploit that to the hilt. And I don't think that Democrats can afford that. It's a short window between now and 2020.
Just briefly, some business of tonight. We have divided up these twin Mississippi Senate races into something arbitrary. Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2. This is the latter. As predicted here, as we've been discussing, neither candidate reached 50% in a three-way race. There will be a runoff. As Rachel put it, kind of fixing it on the American calendar, 5 days after Thanksgiving.
That's right.
So
now,
there you have it.
when we were talking about this earlier, there was the prospect, had Beto O'Rourke beaten Ted Cruz in Texas, that this Mississippi Senate race might have been determinative in terms of who controlled the U.S. Senate. Now that appears they do not have that weight on their shoulders for that runoff, and that will change the character of it. Mike Espy will have a hard road to hoe in Mississippi now that the other Republican candidate who drained 20% or whatever it was of the vote won't be in that race, and it'll just be head-to-head with Cindy Hyde-Smith. But this election, for what it's worth, won't technically be over until much deeper into this month. In terms of the oversight stuff that's about to happen in Congress, Congresswoman Edwards, I wanted to ask you, just looking at these chairmen that we're about to get, Adam Schiff in Intelligence, Maxine Waters, Financial Services, Richie Neal in Ways and Means, Jerry Nadler in Judiciary, all the other chairs that we're about to see. Do you feel like the Democrats have a good team on the bench ready to get in there? Do you feel like those chairs are just the product of seniority, or do you feel like this is a group that the Democrats should have confidence in? Should they go through the kind of process Republicans went through where they turf their seniors out?
Look, if you look at, for example, take Elijah Cummings or Adam Schiff, either of the two of them, if Nancy Pelosi weren't in the picture, could be the Speaker of the House. These are really, they're talented, they're smart, they're strategic, and the same with the other chairs. And so I think these chairs are going to have to come together, and they need to make a decision about who gets to investigate what. And you can imagine the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is very expansive. And so they could do a lot of the legwork on a range of these different issues and then leave the other committees to do their committee work.
Have I just been snowed by Congressman Cummings into thinking that he's really, really good at what he does?
He's smart,
really
he's talented, he's really good. And not just because he's from Maryland.
That's fair enough.
We have 6 minutes until the top of the hour. Where would we... We're going to go to California, which closes in 6 minutes. Sorry, I thought that was at the top of the hour. Jacob Soboroff is standing by to talk to us in California, in Santa Ana, to be specific. Look at that line behind you, Jacob.
Yeah, Brian, I know that we've called the House. I don't know if these people know that we've called the House. I don't know if they care that we have called the House. This line is still 3 hours long. Like you said, we're 6 minutes away from the polls closing here in Santa Ana. We showed up in Santa Ana and at the headquarters of the Orange County Registrar, where I spent a lot of time talking to Rachel from last night, because 4 congressional districts are located here in Orange County, and those 4 congressional districts are on that list that Democrats are targeting to flip. When we talk about how far the House will go, how high that number will be driven up, this is the place to look after 11 o'clock Eastern time in 4 minutes from now. We've got the 39th Congressional District of California, the 45th, the 48th, and the 49th, and all of those are teetering on the edge. I've talked to people from each and every one of those districts here. The reason they can all vote at this location is it's called a vote center, and it's a centralized location where this registrar is responsible for the 1.6 million people that all vote in Orange County. And I can tell you from spending a lot of time on the ground out here, from going through all of these districts, talking to some of the Congress people, but also, frankly, to more of the voters, they were ready for change. We heard about all kinds of things, but particularly Donald Trump. And places like Newport Beach, California, Huntington Beach, where Dana Rohrabacher has been a longtime congressman. It wasn't just his ties to Russia, but the reality of what life is like in these places. They say the economy is not as good as President Trump has put it. They talked to me about the separation of the children down on the border, where I spent a lot of time earlier this year. They were unhappy with the way things were going in Washington, but they're also unhappy with the way things are going at home. And I think that that is part of the reason that with 6 minutes to go until polls close, you got a 3 hour long line to still get inside this Orange County Registrar's office, guys.
A very dramatic depiction of the situation in Santa Ana, California tonight.
We had thought that there was a good possibility that California was going to be the place that we were going to be watching, not just for hours tonight, but potentially for days or weeks, if that's what it came down to in terms of control of the House. As Jacob said, he doesn't know if the people there in line in Santa Ana know that the House has already been called. But at this point, it's a race for the margin. It's a race to see how big the Democratic majority is going to be. Chris Matthews, when you look at that being the sort of what we're waiting for tonight in terms of House races, how much of a difference does it make in terms of the governing mandate of the party in power in the House, how big a margin they've got?
Well, you need 218 to get anything done.
Yeah.
As Donna knows, 218 is the magic number. Every time a bill comes up, you need 218. So you've got holdouts. You might have moderate Democrats, conservative Democrats, a few of them, and they can hold out. Here we got another story here.
This is Gillum conceding in Florida.
In order to make ends meet. I'm extremely proud that this evening, the voters of the state of Florida decided to pass Amendment 4. Proud about that. That is just one step closer to getting us where it is that we need to be as a state. Y'all, I want to encourage you not to give up. I want to encourage you to stick to the fight. I want you to know that every step of this way, even though I won't have the blessing of serving as the next governor of the state of Florida, I still plan to be on the front lines right alongside every single one of you when it comes to standing up for what it is that we believe in. As I said all along the campaign trail, power sees nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We still have to be willing to show up every single day and demand our seat at the table. We got to be willing, inside of elections and outside of elections, to say that our voices still matter, that we still have relevance. I still believe and I still trust the voters. We may not have all shown up in the way that we thought and hoped that we would, but I still believe that there are still more of us who believe in what is common and what is decent and what is right. And I believe in the long run, good always wins out over evil. I still believe that. Many of you all along the trail heard me talk rather repeatedly about my grandmother. Someone pointed out that she was the real winner of the governor's race. My grandmother, who poured so much into us, because my mother and father, as I would often share, would have to get up so early in the morning and go off to work. They would load us up in the car and take us over to my grandmama's house where we would sleep just a little bit longer. And my grandmother would often have a ritual. It was a two-step ritual. The first phase of that is that she'd grab her bottle of olive oil, sometimes cooking oil, whatever the shiniest oil was that she can get her hands on. And she would build a cross across my forehead. It was her way of sending us out into the day with a blessing that no harm would come our way. And then she would have this refrain where she would say, boy, go to school, mind your teachers, get your lesson, and one day bring that education home. She would say, bring it home for your little brother and your little sister who don't know what it is yet. Bring it home. Bring it home for that little boy down the street that you play with. God knows where he's going to end up. Bring it home. She said, bring it home for your mama and for your daddy who get out there every single day, going to work on somebody else's job in order to keep a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food on the table. Bring it home. As I shared with you on the campaign trail, I didn't always know what my grandmother was trying to communicate, but I would come to learn that what she was saying is that it wasn't just about me. Y'all, I'm reminded this evening that it is not about me. That it's not about my wife, not Chris King, not Kristen. This is about all of us. This is about the collective. This is about the belief that if we all do good, we can all do good. And we can do good by doing good. That if we all put our oars in the water and row in the same direction, that we can all get further than by ourselves. I still believe that to be true this evening. Even in defeat, I believe that to be true. The question is, we have a choice to make tomorrow morning. Are we going to wake up and bask in sorrow and defeat? Or are we going to get up and reassert ourselves to the mission at hand? Are we going to get up and fight for the things that we believe in? Are we going to get up and say that we still deserve our seat at the table? Look, I said before that I believe that we have to have a table in this state that is long enough, that is wide enough, that is deep enough to fit all of us. I still believe that we got to have that table. But y'all, we're just going to have to do a little bit more work in order to build that table. We're going to have to do a little bit more in order to make our way to it. If there's not a chair there for us, let's pull up our own folding chair.
Let's show our work here a little bit. Here's what just happened. We got alerted that Gillum was giving the speech. We're calling DeSantis the apparent winner in Florida, though this had not happened. We had not called the race before the speech started. And let us recap a couple of races here at the top of the hour, since we just passed into 11 p.m. Eastern Time. In California, we have a couple incumbents returning to the Senate. As we just mentioned, DeSantis, we are calling the apparent winner in Florida. Let's go out to California. The Senate race, Dianne Feinstein is going back to the U.S. Senate. In Hawaii, the Democrat Mazie Hirono is going back to the U.S. Senate. We talked about two races tonight in Minnesota. Tina Smith was the appointee going back to the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. In the state of Washington, too early to call. Remember, these West Coast races, a lot of them just coming online for us. Steve Kornacki, we have not record kept, as we look at Republican control of the Senate. We have not record kept on a couple of House races, and a couple of big names have fallen here in the last hour.
Yeah, let's go through what we've seen recently. Let's start in Virginia's 7th District. We were talking about this all night. Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat, we are now declaring the winner over Dave Bratt, the Republican incumbent. Richmond suburbs here. The bookends here. It was Bratt, 2014, knocked off Eric Cantor, one of the big political upsets of the modern era. 4 years later, he is losing his seat in Virginia's suburbs. That's a Democratic pickup. The 22nd District of New York, Claudia Tenney, very conservative Republican incumbent. She is going to lose to Anthony Brindisi. How about the 19th District, the Hudson Valley? Wow. John Faso, Republican incumbent, losing to Antonio Delgado. Of course, the ads Republicans ran against Delgado in this campaign became a source of controversy. Delgado is going to win there. The 6th District of Illinois, outside Chicago. Peter Roskam, Republican incumbent, Clinton District. We've been seeing this combination a lot tonight. He is going to be defeated. The 1st District of Iowa. This is one of those places that surged by double digits towards Donald Trump in 2016. Northeast Iowa, Rod Blum, Republican incumbent. He is going to lose. Abby Finkenauer. Iowa. I think she was poised to be the youngest woman ever elected to Congress, and then you had that big upset in Joe Crowley's district earlier this year. I think she will now become the 2nd youngest woman ever elected to Congress. That a Democratic pickup as well. There's also, we can tell you about New Jersey's 2nd District here. Jeff Van Drew has declared victory, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer here. But Seth Grossman, this is an interesting story that is this close. Seth Grossman was disowned by the National Republican Party and denounced by the chairman of the New Jersey State Republican Party for racist and bigoted comments. The words there of the New Jersey Republican chairman. The fact that it's sitting at 58, and we haven't officially called it at this point, at this hour, is somewhat noteworthy. But if Van Drew does hang on in our projection, then that would be a Democratic pickup there as well. Also, just coming across the wire, the 7th District of Texas. This is Harris County, Houston, suburban. This another one of those. I can show you on the screen here. A Hillary Clinton district in 2016 flips to the Democrat. Lizzie Fletcher taking out John Culberson. You want to go way back in time, a half a century, when the Republican Party was in its infancy in Texas. Where did it have one of its first big breakthroughs? It was in this district, and it was by a man named George H.W. Bush, who won a House seat here about 50 years ago. Seat's been Republican since then, no longer. Democrat Lizzie Fletcher takes that one over. And we have also, we said there were a couple of seats here that Republicans were targeting, that were Democratic seats that Republicans were targeting. One more Republicans have picked up. This is the 8th District of Minnesota. This is the Iron Range. This is an area that really swung hard to Donald Trump in 2016. Blue collar, traditionally Democratic, swung hard to Trump. Open seat, Republican. A former hockey player there, Pete Stauber, wins it. So put this together, you got those 2 Republican gains so far in Democratic territory. Then you have 18, 21, 22, so a net Democratic gain at this hour of 20 seats. Of course, 23 officially gives them control. There's a whole bunch more where they seem to be on the verge of victory. So they're very close to crossing that line of 23. And then the question just becomes, how high are we counting in terms of majority?
Steve, can I just ask you an Iowa question? I see you've got another couple of Iowa districts up there that you don't yet have calls in. How is Steve King doing? I'm just wondering if he's going to be in a caucus with Mr. Grossman, if Mr. Grossman gets that race.
Yeah, there you go. About 135,000 votes votes in here, about a third of the district. Let's see where this is coming in from. It is sort of scattered. I mean, this is a Trump plus 27 district here. So Steve King, this is the most conservative part of Iowa, sort of northwest Iowa right there. Steve King leading by 5,000 votes, about a third of the vote in right there. And also one more while we're on Iowa, we can just check in on David. And look at this now, with almost 2/3 of the vote in. David Young, Republican incumbent here, trailing by 8 points, a 20,000 vote gap. So I'll tell you, there is a scenario right here. 4 districts in Iowa. You got the Democrat surviving in the other one. Rod Blum goes down in 1. If David Young goes down in 3, and if Steve King, after this, survives in 4, after the chairman of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee denounced him, he could be, if he survives, the only Republican coming back to Congress from Iowa, which might enhance his stature in a backward way.
And right now, the Iowa governor's race is too close to call at this point in terms of whether or not, in terms of statewide elected Iowa politicians as well. Do you have that? Yeah.
And you can put that right up on the screen. Kim Reynolds.
Too early to call, forgive me.
Kim Reynolds, of course, and she's the interim governor, trailing by about 25,000 votes right now in that governor's race.
Iowa, Kansas, these states are turning out to be absolutely fascinating tonight in terms of Democratic prospects. I do want to give us one additional call. I've been focusing on governor's races tonight, keeping an eye on those, and we do have a call in Oregon. Now, we think of Oregon as a deep blue state, but there was question as to whether or not the Oregon incumbent governor, Kate Brown, would be able to win. That's not Kate Brown. That is a projection. NBC News projecting that in California, the governor will be Democrat Gavin Newsom. And thank you, Oregon governor, projected winner Kate Brown, the Democrat, who is the incumbent governor, facing actually a tough race in Oregon against Newt Bueller, who is the Republican there. Oregon has quirky politics right now and has been through some gubernatorial scandals with the antecedent governor to Kate Brown, but she will be winning tonight. And Gavin Newsom will now become a figure of national renown as the head of the Republic of California.
Our family has changed yet again here in the studio. Nicole Wallace, Donna Edwards, Steve Schmidt now join us. Nicole, your summation of what we've just witnessed thus far?
You know, I think it's Democrats went into this night with such high expectations for themselves. Republicans, you know, dare I say, are mostly numb inside. I mean, the Trump presidency, if you still have a conscience, it's been knocked silly. And if you're all in with Trump, then you know, this is probably better than what you were prepared for. I think Republicans focused on real emotional letdowns in Beto not getting across the finish line, feeling you know, distraught about the results at this point in Florida and Georgia. But I think the bigger story, the story with more consequences, and we talked about this already, that the Democrats now control the House is really an earthquake, a political earthquake, an investigative earthquake, and the first time that Donald Trump as president will be accountable to anybody.
He'll have a check on his power for the first time.
I mean, that is a huge story and a bigger deal. And if you think that Donald Trump is what's broken, winning those state houses, winning some of those governor's races wasn't going to fix it. But taking control of the House might.
Donna Edwards, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for Democrats, we tried to actually temper our expectations because of 2016. Mm-hmm. I think tonight is proving to be a really good night. And, you know, when I look at the potential governing majority, I see a majority that's actually going to be able to get some things done. And yes, a check on Donald Trump. A part of that check is doing things that the president just avoids. And so, you know, I look at tonight and just say, you see a place like in Houston with Culbertson losing. Yeah. I mean, tonight, Republicans already have lost 3 chairmen. Not just, you know, the rank and file members. They have lost 3 chairmen in Culbertson and Pete Sessions and Peter Roskam. Mm-hmm. That's part of their leadership core, mm-hmm. and that's very damaging to them inside their caucus.
Steve Schmidt, does anyone grow courage within the Republican Party because the returning Congress will see a shift of power against this president?
Absolutely not. The Republican Party won't be chastened. It'll be emboldened. The Republicans that have lost, the lesson that will be taken from this election is they lost because they didn't embrace Trumpism fully. That had they engaged in the incitement tactics that will have worked in states like Ohio, where Mike DeWine was elected governor, in Florida, where Gillum went down to DeSantis. That's the lesson. That's the takeaway from Republicans. But we shouldn't bury the lead here. And the lead is this. We know something right now that we didn't know this morning. And that is, come January, there's a check on Donald Trump. Democrats hold the subpoena power. The unchecked corruption is at its end. All of the Trump officials who have abused the taxpayer, who have serially lied to the country, they now will be held to account. I disagree with Donna that very much is going to get done. I think nothing will get done. Our politics is broken. It's paralyzed. There will be chaos. It will get worse. But Donald Trump will be much less able to abuse his power than he was for the last 2 years. That's the headline out of tonight. The other thing that comes out of tonight is this, is Donald Trump has stoked what I've called a cold civil war in this country. He's pitted the country regionally against each other. He's turned different races against each other, different religions against each other. And we see the battle lines and where they're being drawn. Trumpism was repudiated in suburban America, in urban America today. It was emboldened and validated in rural America today. And that's going to have enormous implications as we get ready for the presidential election.
I wonder if that invasion headed this way from the South will take on a slightly less urgent standing with the results of the election. Steve Kornacki, I'm told we had another flip in the House.
Yeah, and this is, we set this up earlier as a potential one. It's now official, and this one, this is the surprise of the night, at least just in terms of where the expectations were. Nobody was talking coming into the night about the 5th District of Oklahoma, but Kendra Horn is her name. She is officially declared the winner here. This district, you go all the way back to 1975. There was a Democrat who represented this district who switched parties to the Republican Party. It has been in Republican hands ever since. Now Kendra Horn will become the first Democrat to represent this district in more than 40 years. This is a district that Donald Trump won by 13 points. There are some issues in Oklahoma. Obviously, the Republican winning that governor's race tonight, but there have been some issues with the Republican Party in Oklahoma having trouble in some local contests, some state legislative. That might have rubbed off here as well. Steve Russell was elected first in 2014. So this, the surprise of the night so far, but also you just look at the net gains. Look, 11, 15, 18, 21, 22. This is the 23rd pickup now for Democrats. Now, they've lost 2, remember, so they're sitting there at 21 in terms of where is that official, where are they going to officially cross the line. There are a number of races, as we said, that could be called soon. The Democrats leading here in the 3rd district, for instance. How about this one? Leonard Lance, Republican incumbent. He's been there for 10 years in New Jersey. A lot of the vote counted now. He continues to trail there. New Jersey 2. We've now called New Jersey 2. I mentioned this one a minute ago. Seth Grossman denounced by his own party. They refused to support his candidacy. He refused to leave the race. He is going to lose this one. I think notable, it took until 70% of the vote was in to actually get this call made. This a lot closer than I think anybody was expecting, but the Democrats do get the pickup here. There are a number, how about this one, the 1st District of Pennsylvania, Brian Fitzpatrick hanging on barely. This is a Clinton district. Here's a name, Chris Collins, running for re-election under indictment. He is leading right now, but that is still too close to call. And we have one more I did want to show you. This is another one of those Clinton districts, and Jason Lewis, a Republican incumbent, trailing him. Lewis, of course, there was controversy during the campaign about comments he'd made. He was a radio talk show host before entering Congress, and all sorts of old comments he made surfaced during this campaign, putting him in some trouble there. Steve's re-election campaign.
Just sneak in the 3 Jersey districts. No one will notice. I think. Well, I guess we got 2 more. 3 and 7. Okay, Andy Kim.
Yeah, and look at this one. And this is a real easy one to see with very few votes left here. If you just go, I said real easy. Now I got to go all the way across the country.
I'm sorry.
Look at
See
this.
what we've done.
2 counties tell the story here. This is the Republican county. Almost all the vote is in. This is the more Democratic county. A little bit more to come. Is there enough in Burlington County to get Andrew Kim and an extra 2,400 votes? Might be too much for him, but MacArthur in a fight for his political career right now.
And one more. Jersey 7?
Oh, Jersey, yes, this is Leonard Lance. Again, he is falling short right now with a little bit left to come in there.
Tom Malinowski will be, again, a national profile Democrat if he makes his way into the House. He was an assistant secretary of state in the Obama administration. He is eloquent. He's absolutely star material. If he beats Leonard Lance, that'll be the start of something for him.
And Lance was that endangered species, a moderate Republican out in the suburbs outside of New York City. Stabenow reelected. We have this much into us while we were having that conversation in Michigan, the returning Democrat. Another break for us. We'll have more when we come right back. Still more live vote returns coming in. We are back in a couple races we have not record kept on, and that is projected winner of the Ohio governor's race. John Kasich, of course, was not in the race. Mike DeWine and Tim Walz in Minnesota for governor. Georgia, all of you wondering, too early to call, early in terms of the counting of the vote.
Let's go right to Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, I think it's the milestone moment here. We said Democrats need to get a net gain of 23. They lost those two earlier, but their 25th gain, which is a net gain of 23, just came in. It is the 2nd district of Minnesota. Jason Lewis, we were talking about him a minute ago. He has been unseated. We're projecting Angie Craig defeats Jason Lewis. And again, what that means, we have 25 Democratic pickups here on their target list. We look at the seats that Republicans were going after. They've picked up 2, that one in the Iron Range, that one in Pennsylvania, 14. So right now, that gives the Democrats the net gain of 23. That's what they needed to get control.
Amy Klobuchar was live on our air earlier this hour saying that the Democrats would flip House seats in Minnesota. We now see that there. We also see Democrat Tim Walz, who left the House in order to run for governor, taking the governorship there, too.
And I've just learned Dave Wasserman, who's our expert on the House, says over 100 women have been elected to the House.
For the first time ever?
Yeah.
Hey, wow. That seems like we should have a cake or something.
Or something. Graphic.
Seems like we should do something. What we do have is Lawrence O'Donnell, who is in California for us. Lawrence, the polls there have been closed for 22 minutes. We have seen a call in the governor's race. Gavin Newsom will need to be the new Democratic governor of California. Dianne Feinstein has also been handily reelected U.S. Senator. We now await the long walk through the House seats in California. You were bullish on Democratic chances earlier tonight, saying that you thought the Democrats would flip a lot of those 7 seats they're aiming at in California. How are you feeling now?
Well, so far, what the Democrats were working on, what they were trying to do, they have achieved. They have basically been flipping every one of the seats that they targeted to flip, and they've picked up a few more along the way that they weren't necessarily expecting. This looks like there will be a Democratic flip, a flip of over 30 seats and a pickup of probably about 30 seats. There's 7 very likely flips for Democrats right now in California. That's without any surprises. Now, if there's a surprise or two, and there could be, then we'd be even higher. But it's starting to look like by the end of the night, by the time we've counted what's happened in California, the Democrats will have flipped at least 30 seats and picked up possibly 30 thereabouts.
This is a night that is going to stretch into the wee hours, and we sort of knew that that was going to happen. Lawrence, I also wanted to get your take on what we're seeing in terms of these governor's races. We've seen Chris Kobach, for example, lose that governor's race in Kansas. We've seen Democrats pick up the governorship in Minnesota. We see 2 close-to-call races in places like South Dakota, too early to call in Iowa. Democrats knew they were going to have a pretty good night in terms of the governorships. How do you think that changes national politics heading into these next couple of years?
Well, I think it puts the United States senators, the 22 Republican United States senators who are running for re-election 2 years from now, are all tonight looking at their states and saying, what does this mean to me? Pat Roberts running for re-election in Kansas, for example. What does it mean to him that Kansas has just elected a Democratic member of the House? And he's not going to ignore something like that. Ben Sass, Mitch McConnell, 76 years old. has to look at these results tonight, look at the loss of the House of Representatives, and will he look at it and see what Paul Ryan saw when he took over the speakership for these last 2 years? It seemed pretty clear to me a couple of months into Paul Ryan's run in this term of his speakership that he was not going to run for re-election because it seemed pretty clear to Paul Ryan they were going to lose the House of Representatives. Is Mitch McConnell going to, in January, take a look at the way things are and decide he's not going to run for re-election? What does that do if there's an open seat in Kentucky? Mitch McConnell knows what it is to lose the power of the majority leader. And I don't believe if Mitch McConnell thinks that the Republicans are going to lose the Senate, that he would want to sentence himself to 6 years as the possibly minority leader of the United States Senate.
Lawrence, do you feel like you know what to expect from Nancy Pelosi now that she is going to ascend back to the speakership? She's obviously the only woman to have ever held that job, the highest-ranking woman ever in American politics. She's been a boogeyman of the right and of the Republican Party forever.
Boogie woman.
Boogie woman, thank you. Boogie person. That was a great movie, actually, wasn't it? But she's now ascending back to the leadership, and there's a lot of noise always in the Beltway press about how she's potentially in danger as a leader and how she's this drag on her caucus. It seems clear to me that she's definitely going to be speaker, and that even if she allows, even if there's going to be some votes against her, that's fine. She's perfectly comfortable with it. She's got a really thick skin. What do you think she's going to be like as speaker heading back up there, given that she's been there once already?
Well, she has already said she doesn't expect to serve long as speaker. So she has joined this discussion of what happens next. But she definitely wants to be the next speaker. She will be. There's no question about that. But she may announce early on that she is not running for re-election, for example. The last time we saw a kind of orderly, voluntary release of the speakership really was Tip O'Neill, who Chris Matthews will remember. Tip O'Neill actually announced before his own personal last re-election campaign that it would be his last re-election campaign. He told the voters, this is the last time you will re-elect me to the House, which was in effect telling the House it's the last time that I'll be speaker. So he did that well in advance, farther in advance than anyone has since. Paul Ryan did it when the writing was on the wall and there wasn't a chance to hold on. He knew, last year there wasn't a chance to hold on to this Republican margin in the House of Representatives. So I expect Nancy Pelosi to be part of looking for who is next, who should be next. And I think people are quickly going to, when they start exploring that, they're going to quickly start to look at another Californian, Adam Schiff.
Lawrence O'Donnell, the night, as they say, is young. It is but a puppy. You're going to be there for a really important and interesting night in the state of California.
The night is even younger in California.
That's right. I'm on the next flight, if that were true. Thank you, my friend. We'll be checking back in with you. We have here on the set, we should not forget, a former chair of the Republican Party. I'm looking at you. You've got to look over here. There you go. You got to wear this. You got to. And here's my question,
we
Mr.
don't make
Chairman.
eye contact anymore.
Here's my question for Michael Steele, a serious question. If you were chairman today and you had your chief lieutenants in a staff meeting next Monday morning, what would you say? What would be your damage assessment and your call to arms?
Well, the first thing would be that the damage assessment, take a look at the field of play, find where we were the weakest, and then begin to understand exactly how the Democrats were successful. I had to do that in 2009. I walked in the door, Barack Obama's down across the street, down the street, and winning with that big election. We just lost in 06 and 08. We were hemorrhaging leadership. We were hemorrhaging dollars. We were hemorrhaging, most importantly, grassroots activists. So you have to assess why you are where you are. The problem I fear, and Nicole knows this also well, is that we will not learn anything from this because Donald Trump won't allow them to learn anything from this. And by them, I mean Republican leaders, Republican activists, the men and women who actually built the success that we found in 2010. We will not learn anything because the emphasis is still going to rotate around one personality and one idea. And the idea is not GOP. The idea is not Republican principles of value. The idea is, what does Donald Trump want? The only caution I would say to my friends across the aisle is do not be so quick to start talking about hearings and subpoenas and tax returns, because to do that, you are playing exactly into Donald Trump's hands. You are on page 1 of his playbook, which begins probably with a tweet in 3 hours.
And, Mr. Chairman, the voters tonight are saying pre-existing conditions. They're not saying get his tax returns.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's, again, you talk about what Republicans have to learn, what Democrats have to learn is understand why you won. Understand what brought you to this moment.
Isn't there a deal there?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
You know who the perfect person to talk to at this exact moment in the conversation
who
would be?
Who would that be, Rachel?
If we could get Congressman Adam Schiff, who is the incoming chairman of the Intelligence Committee, what are the odds? Hi, Congressman Adam Schiff of California. When we speak about him, sometimes he appears. Congressman, we're really, really happy to have you with us tonight. According to NBC News projections, you are on deck to be the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee as your party appears poised to take control of the House. What's your reaction to that news and to that big new responsibility that you've just been given?
Well, I'm very grateful to people all over the country, millions of people who've been really working day and night for 2 years to make this happen, to essentially retake the control in the direction of the country, to make sure that the Congress once again can play its role as a co-equal branch of government. So I feel enormously grateful for all of those that work so hard. And this is a big responsibility. Look, it's a big vote of confidence by the American people. And we're going to set a positive agenda going forward on just the issues that you were talking about. Making sure that people can afford their health care, that if they have pre-existing conditions, they can keep their health care, that we address the needs of so many Americans who, yes, are working, but not earning enough to get by. But we also intend to make sure that the oversight role that the Republicans so completely abdicated, we once again, the Congress once again undertakes and does so responsibly.
Congressman, Devin Nunes is one of the Republicans who abdicated that oversight role in the Russia investigation. Your committee's investigation abruptly cut short. Greg Miller, who covers national security for the Washington Post, tweeted tonight that you, as the new chairman of the House Intel Committee, will bring back Trump Jr. You'll bring back perhaps Roger Stone or Paul Manafort, other witnesses. Do you have a list? Do you know what you're going to do as the chairman? And are you able to tell us who you want to bring back?
I'm not able to tell you that tonight. We're certainly going to look at the work that we were able to do. We're going to look at the work that the GOP obstructed on our committee. And it was really worse than abdicating the responsibility of the committee. The majority went further to be complicit in the president's attacks on the independence of the Justice Department, on the men and women of the FBI, on our intelligence community. So we also need to restore the relationship between our committee and the intelligence community and law enforcement. But look, at the time when we formally take control of the House, that won't be until January. And we'll have to see what Bob Mueller has been able to do and what Bob Mueller has been able to say, either via indictment or via report. And that will also guide what we intend to do in our committee.
A former national security official who worked for Democratic and Republican presidents reminded me today that legislation was never passed to protect Robert Mueller's investigation, making your work and your committee's work all the more important. What do you think the prospects are for Robert Mueller being allowed to complete his work, with Donald Trump maybe viewing tonight's results as some sort of endorsement of his presidency?
I think that the chances that Bob Mueller will be able to finish his work improved for the reason that our committee and others like the Government Reform Committee and the Judiciary Committee, which under Republican leadership served as basically surrogates for the president in their efforts to batter down the Justice Department, to give the president a pretext to fire people in the Justice Department. All of that, that tearing down of the independence of these institutions is going to end. Now, that doesn't mean that the president can't still act in ways that are antithetical to the rule of law and the interests of justice, but it does mean that we're better able to protect our institutions and see this investigation, I hope, complete.
Hey, Congressman, we're going to join Nancy Pelosi in progress. Just in the closing seconds before we do, I have a question for you about the integrity of our election system. How thorough and complete, in your mind, is Russian intervention into our government and our systems? Do you look at any numbers on a night like tonight and worry there are any shenanigans going on? Do you think we have integrity in all the numbers we've reported tonight?
Well, I certainly hope that we have integrity in the numbers that you reported tonight. Honestly, as we've approached Election Day, my concerns over what the Russians were doing were less than my concerns over what the Secretary of State in Georgia was doing, over the elections equipment in Texas, over what was going on in Nebraska, over what might have been self-inflicted wounds in terms of our election integrity, but as well the fact that so many states still, at this day and age, after what we've been through, do not have a paper trail, I think is just negligence on its face, and we're going to have to do far better than that in the future.
Congressman Adam Schiff, Chairman-elect Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us from Burbank, California tonight. We appreciate it. And on the left-hand side of your screen, we'll listen into this. This is, in effect, the management structure of the new House of Representatives on the Democratic side.
Virginia. And the issue of California. D.K. Butterfield of North Carolina. Barbara Lee of California. Henry Cuellar of Texas. Karen Bass of California. Don Beyer of Virginia. And Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. We all join in thanking all of you. Many of you are our VIPs, our real VIPs, our volunteers in politics. The women and men who've mobilized in historic numbers, who saw what this GOP Congress was doing and refused to stand still. Every call you made, every door you knocked, every text you sent, every conversation you had made the difference between winning and losing in this election. Thanks to you, we owned the ground. Thanks to you. Thanks to you, tomorrow will be a new day in America. Remember this feeling, know the power to win. And almost all congratulations to those dynamic, diverse, incredible candidates who have taken back the House for the American people. Let us salute all of our candidates. All of our candidates. Today is more than about Democrats and Republicans. It's about restoring the Constitution's checks and balances to the Trump administration. It's about stopping the GOP and Mitch McConnell's assaults on Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, and the health care of 130 million Americans living with pre-existing medical conditions. Let's hear it more for pre-existing medical conditions. It's about ending wealthy special interest free reign over Washington, but more than anything, it's about what a new Democratic majority will mean in the lives of hardworking Americans. That's what it's about. Democrats pledge a Congress that works for the people. For the people. Lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Raise workers' wages with strong economic growth by rebuilding the infrastructure of America. Clean up corruption to make Washington work for all Americans. We will take real, very, very strong legislative action to negotiate down the price control of prescription drugs that is burdening seniors and families across America. We will deliver a transformational investment in America's infrastructure to create more good-paying jobs, rebuilding our roads, bridges, schools, water systems, broadband networks, and schools and housing and beyond. We will drain the swamp of dark interest money in our elections, because when we do, Americans have greater confidence in everything their Congress works on, from health care to taxes to guns to clean air and clean water for our children, when they know that the people's interest will prevail, not the dark special interest. In stark contrast to the GOP Congress, the Democratic Congress will be led with transparency and openness, so that the public can see what's happening and how it affects them, and that they can weigh in with the members of Congress and with the President of the United States. We will have accountability, and we will strive for bipartisanship with fairness on all sides. We will have a responsibility to find our common ground where we can, stand our ground where we can't, but we must try. We have a bipartisan marketplace of ideas that makes our democracy strong. A Democratic Congress will work for solutions that bring us together, because we have all had enough of division. The American people want peace. They want results. They want us to work for positive results for their lives. Our founders believed in a principle that they knew must guide our nation. First, in our Declaration, they promised life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But they gave us guidance, e pluribus unum, from any one. The founders could never have imagined how vast our country would become, how many we would be, how different we would be from each other. But they knew we had to be one. Unity. Unity for our country. And that today the American people have spoken to restore that vision. With this new Democratic majority, we'll honor the vision of our founders for a country having a legitimate debate, but remembering that we are one country. We'll honor the sacrifices of our men and women in uniform and their families, who have made us the land of the free and the home of the brave. To build a better future worthy of their sacrifice. And we must honor and respect the aspirations of our children. Elections are about the future and what we do for our children's future. So thank you all for making the future better for all of America's children. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you all very much.
Suppose she could be referred to as Speaker-elect of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi of California. While I'm certain she didn't mean it this way, she just said, let's hear it for pre-existing medical conditions. That's a heck of a quote. Anywho, we'll rush to a break. We'll come back with more of our election returns as we cover this momentous night in American politics, still playing out from east to west to California. Here's an important state, a tough state to figure out politically because it's several states in one, as so many of them are. But here is your new projected GOP senator from the great state of Missouri. We had an interview with Claire McCaskill earlier this evening. She knew she faced a tough road. This one's going to hurt the Democrats. They wanted it badly. Claire McCaskill is giving what amounts to a concession speech. Let's listen in.
He really has had to endure, especially in this campaign. You don't even know how nasty they were. It was terrible what they tried to do to him. And then look at this, huh? These are my siblings and my children and my stepchildren and a small part of my grandchildren. Many of them are too young to be up this late. So how can I look to the future and be anything but blessed, right? But I want to say my biggest thanks to the people of Missouri. We love you. The people of Missouri allowed me, beginning when I was 28 years old, to serve the public, to serve them, to be a public servant. And for decades, I have been blessed to get up every day and work in a challenging and interesting job, trying to make things better in people's lives. It has been such an honor, and this state drives me crazy, but I love every corner of it. I really do. I mean, I even love the reddest of the red counties, and there were a lot of them tonight. Because the people of this state are down to earth, and they're kind, and they are, well, they're like family to me. And so I feel like we've run a lot of elections together, Missouri and me. My record ends at 22-2. Not a bad record.
McCaskill, you heard her there, her record 22-2, but there on the left, Josh Hawley is your new Republican senator-elect from the great state of Missouri. I'm told Mr. Kornacki is ready to catch us up on some of the races we have not paid close attention to all evening.
Well, we got a squeaker in Wisconsin. Tony Evers, the Democrat, trying to unseat Scott Walker. Fourth shot Democrats have taken at Walker. A 12,000 vote lead for Evers because just in the last few minutes, a big batch of votes came in from Dane County. Think of Madison, University of Wisconsin, big Democratic bastion there. And now most of the vote is suddenly in Dane. This thing was separated by a couple hundred votes as of a few minutes ago with that big batch from Dane that just came in. About a 12,500 votes statewide lead for Tony Evers over Scott Walker. Not a lot of vote left. Where is the vote left? Probably the biggest single place, Brown County, about half the vote in. This is Green Bay and the surroundings. Scott Walker doing very well here, so you'll expect him to make up some of that here. You'll also in Barron County, this is a place where Donald Trump got about 60% of the vote in 2016. You can expect Walker to make up some there. Also, though, these are some smaller counties down here. Evers might do well here. One thing I've been looking for in Wisconsin, this state was home proportionally to the most, they called these things pivot counties in 2016. They voted for Obama 08, Obama 12, Trump 2016. There are 20 of them in Wisconsin, a lot of them right down in this corner of the state. And you can see Evers winning back, I think he's winning back about a half dozen of those pivot counties. So that's the development there in Wisconsin. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. And in Montana, excuse me, John Tester trying to hold off Matt Rosendale. You see Tester leading right now statewide. Here's the thing I can quickly show you to go through this. Tester, of course, had a close re-election in 2012. In a lot of these key counties, if you just start looking at them, Flathead County, Republican County, but in 2012, when Tester won re-election, he only got 37% here in this core Republican county. He's doing 8 points better. Remember, he won statewide, getting 37% of the vote here. How about Lewis and Clark? You know, this is a Helena. This is a more, this is a Democratic county. Tester got 54% of the vote here when he was narrowly reelected in 2012. He's up to 62. We are seeing this all over the place here. He's running 7 or 8 points better in these key counties than he did when he narrowly won re-election. You see the designation we've put on this is it is too early to call, but you see Tester out in front there in Montana.
So, Steve, can I just go? So there are 5 Democratic senators who are up for re-election tonight who are not just from states that Trump held, but they're from states that Trump held by double digits in 2016. McCaskill, Heitkamp, Donnelly, Manchin, and Tester. So far, we know that McCaskill, Heitkamp, and Donnelly are all out. Manchin has definitely held on to his seat. And Tester, as you said, too early to call, but he looks like he's well situated compared to his previous election campaigns.
You would rather be Tester looking at the numbers I just showed you than Rosendale right now.
Okay, let me ask you about one other thing. You mentioned that squeaker of a governor's race in Wisconsin. Can we possibly go to Iowa?
Yes.
And look at the governor's race in Iowa? I've been watching these numbers come in, and that seems wicked close, too.
Yes, Kim Reynolds has just taken the lead here, and I have to catch up exactly where the vote is left to come in. But obviously, Story County here, probably the biggest single gap we have on the board. Again, what is the margin statewide here? It is a 20,000 vote lead for Kim Reynolds. And again, about 10% to come here. I have to look closer to find out exactly where, if there's one party with an advantage there, but a 20,000 vote edge right now for Kim Reynolds.
Can I ask you about one other governor's race?
Yes.
It is the excruciatingly slow-moving Georgia governor's race.
Yes, yes. So let's it is a slow-moving race. Take a look here. Brian Kemp, I think the question right now, and you can see most of the vote in, the question right now with Kemp leading by 3 points, is he going to finish over 50% and avoid that runoff? And again, the guidance we're getting from our decision desk is they think he is more likely than not to do that, but they're not calling it just yet. But I do want to point out one other aspect of this Georgia governor's race I said to keep an eye on. Just take a look at Gwinnett County right here. Stacey Abrams right now winning this thing by 12 points. Just look at the modern voting history of Gwinnett County. Hillary Clinton, I said, first Democrat to ever win this thing in 2016. Romney got it by almost 10 points in 2012. McCain got it by 11 points, and it was bigger Republican margins before that. You see the trajectory here. Abrams now, this is one of the best Democratic performances really ever in this county. In a governor's race in the modern times. What that has done, that performance, I think, take a look at this in the House, the 7th District of Georgia. This is a Republican incumbent. Look at this. Carolyn Bordeaux, Democrat. All the vote is now in. She's 10,000 votes ahead in this race. It's because of that county I just showed you. It's because of Gwinnett County. 80% of this district, Gwinnett County, there's a rounding error, so it adds up a little bit more. But Bordeaux, you could say, potentially here powered by that Stacey Abrams campaign in part, getting huge vote out of Gwinnett County, and it looks like on the verge of taking out Rob Woodall, Republican congressman.
Now, can we also see Georgia 6? Is that the race of Karen Handel's race?
That's right next door, yes. Now, again, here's a squeaker. 800 votes. 100% is in right now. Karen Handel leading by 800. And I'm just going to quickly see the 3 component counties here. This is, DeKalb. This is the Democratic base here. You're looking at about what Ossoff got out of there. Fulton County, in that special election they had last year, handled it a little bit better in Fulton County. This is about what she got out of it. This looks very close to a repeat of that special election last year, with Handel not quite as strong in Fulton County and not quite as strong in Cobb County. But it looks like, and let's just see it, make sure it hasn't changed again, an 805 vote margin.
Wow.
Right there, right now. Karen Handel looks like barely. But again, that is the Democratic strength around Atlanta. The Republicans got their areas out in the rural areas, the ex-urban areas. And that's why Kemp is leading in the governor's race. But the Democratic energy in the Atlanta area brought this thing 4 points closer, basically, than that special election we saw last year. And again, I think has Rob Woodall on the verge of defeat there in the 7th district.
That is remarkable. I mean, in that Lucy McBath, Karen Handel race, obviously Karen Handel, tons of name recognition, in part because of that competition in that special election. But also Lucy McBath coming out of really nowhere, first-time candidate, incredibly charismatic, getting it within 800 votes. Just an amazing story.
And Steve King just won.
Steve King in Iowa 4, absolutely. There are 2 seats that have flipped in Iowa, though, are there not?
So the 1st district, Rod Blum has been defeated. We've been keeping an eye here, 84% of the vote, I should say, in the 3rd district. David Young continues to trail 15,000 votes behind Republican incumbents. So if this holds, Steve King goes back to Washington as the only Republican who made it through 2016 in Iowa.
And Steve, one more. Nutmeg State, land of steady habits, recovering from a Democratic governor, one of the most unpopular in the country.
Yeah, and you can see right now, Ned Lamont, the Democratic nominee, trying to replace Dan Malloy. Dan Malloy had either some of the lowest or maybe even the lowest approval numbers of any governor in the country, a 35,000 vote gap. Now, if you're a Democrat, you're looking at this and you're saying, well, Hartford, there's no vote in from Hartford yet. These are not counties. These are individual cities and towns. That's how they do it in New England. Hartford, a city of about 115,000. No vote in from there yet. No vote as well in from Bridgeport yet, the 2 biggest cities. So that could give Lamont a boost. But, of course, it's always balanced balanced. They're not big bursts of vote, but you've got all of these sort of outlying Republican areas, too, that are going to come in as well. So Stefanowski leading this thing by 35,000 votes. Of course, Ned Lamont, famously, it was 12 years ago, he challenged Joe Lieberman, the senator in a Democratic primary, defeated him in the primary, lost to Lieberman, who ran as an independent. Lamont took a shot at the governor's race, got the nomination, but yeah, 35,000 votes behind, about two-thirds, a little more than two-thirds of the vote now in Connecticut.
And if that lead holds for Stefanowski in Connecticut, we could be talking about Republican governors in Connecticut and Vermont and in Massachusetts. So all of our stereotypes have gotten a little bit ugly.
Massachusetts is the state Connecticut lost General Electric to.
Massachusetts has Charlie Baker. I am convinced, as a Massachusetts resident, that he's as popular as sunshine, and I'm convinced the reason is because he doesn't seem at all like Trump, and people are just so excited to have a Republican in mind who has nothing to do with Trump.
There's a drama in every state.
Yep.
Nicole Wallace, what do you have your eyes on?
You know, I think these governor's races are, in some ways, they're more exciting, and we're keeping an eye on them. But I keep coming back to the big political earthquake in Washington, D.C., that tomorrow morning Democrats will be figuring out how to run these committees. That, you know, we have had a Trump presidency, which has been norm busting and has debased the dialogue. And, you know, most people with kids don't let them turn on the TV when there's political talk on. All of that is unchanged. What changes is that there is now, Democrats will control all the committees that can investigate the other half of sort of the scandal that is the Trump presidency, and that's the rampant corruption. The rampant corruption at the agencies. This is the kinds of stories that you make time for, but a lot of us don't. Almost at every agency, there's been some sort of ethics scandal, and it gets scant media coverage, and it has no oversight in Congress. That all changes tomorrow.
Yeah.
Another thing is the control that the House has over all fiscal matters. Everything has to originate in the House. The president cannot have a new tax bill without Nancy Pelosi's approval, which is unlikely. Can't change the entitlement questions about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Can't do any of that stuff that Mitch McConnell was talking about a few weeks ago. All is under the control now of Nancy Pelosi. It's powerful stuff.
Which leads me to believe that Donald Trump is going to be cutting some deals.
He's going
to cut some deals because he's at his heart and his core transactional. And we've already seen he doesn't have a problem, at least making those initial entrees to Nancy and Chuck. And now that Nancy has the gavel, the incentive to do that, particularly if he's concerned about legacy and wanting to get at least one big thing done before the 2020 election.
It's going to be an interesting test. I'm very glad you put that. I feel like we're at a sort of fork in the road, and it's not our decision. It's going to be Republicans' decision.
Yep.
Either this is Republicanism with a Trump twist on it, or this is Trumpism, which is built for fighting and not for governing.
Right.
And what we have seen thus far with him in power and with Republicans in control of both the House and the Senate in having no interest in checking him in any way is that since he's been there, he has used the power that he has as president to consolidate power in his own office, in himself singularly.
Right.
He's disempowered the cabinet, disempowered all staffers, disempowered all expert advice that he might get from anybody, disempowered the Congress. They say what they want to do, and he just does his own thing anyway.
Right.
He's consolidated power around himself. He, for the first time, will be checked by another entity that has real, not theoretical, not just media power. Does he crumble in the face of that? Does he see that as a way to just pick new fights? Or does he govern like a Republican might and seek deals? Right. I don't know which way he'll go.
Yeah. I think it's more deal orientation versus crumbling, because the one thing about crumbling, that's failure. And that's not a space he wants to occupy.
He doesn't enjoy confrontation. He's about to get some.
That's right.
But you know, that's so true what you said, and sharply put, because the Republicans have a problem with health care. They don't have a message. They got hurt on it this time. The House, I think the policy people would say we won the House, Democrats, because of their position on health care. He's got to get beyond this pre-existing condition thing. That was we had a joke with a moment ago. And I think he also can do something on infrastructure. We got the word from the House Ways and Means Committee tonight, the staff. They're going to do something there. There's a lot of play here for him to get out of trouble. And maybe we'll get an immigration bill. That's the hardest one.
It just became Wednesday here on the East Coast. It is coming up on 12:03 a.m. For our friends out on the West Coast. The night is young. And here's the story. If you just came in on our conversation, this is what we're talking about. Control of the House of Representatives and all that means will be under the Democratic Party now. Here is our estimate that when all the smoke clears, what the House will look like, Dems versus GOP. The Senate is another story, and it's been kind of a quiet tidal wave tonight as we've watched major members of the Senate on the Democratic side fall, in addition to seats they wanted badly. But here is the current count, and note the gray. As we've been saying all night, 51 confirmed locked-in GOP. Of course, anything over 50, plus VP Mike Pence gives you the working majority, especially the way they've been voting. The Dems stand at 43.
And we've been watching a couple of these Senate seats unfold and watching the vote come in. It's been interesting to watch Montana. John Tester, one of those senators who is running in a state that was double digits for Trump. Montana was 20 points for Trump, and Tester's running there. Also in Arizona, it looks like we've got a tight race there in terms of the Senate. So, I mean, right now the Republicans are at the majority that they've got right now in the Senate. The question is whether or not they are going to build on that. It's not unheard of for parties to add seats in the Senate, even as they lose in the House in a midterm. Ronald Reagan went through that himself when he was at an unpopular point in his presidency in one of his midterms. But the remaining Senate races here that aren't yet called, Florida, Arizona, Maine, Nevada, Montana, these are going to be very important in terms of how much leeway McConnell's got to maneuver in the Senate and what happens in terms of all the all-important confirmation fights.
And here was the heartbreaker for so many Democrats tonight. This is Beto O'Rourke speaking live in Texas.
El Paso has produced some really great teams over the years. And I am very lucky that I got to be part of one that came out of this community. And for the last 22 months, has been traveling every single county of Texas, being there to listen to and show up for every single one of us. I am as inspired, I'm as hopeful as I have ever been in my life. And tonight's loss does nothing to diminish the way that I feel about Texas or this country. Getting to be with and to see all of you tonight reminds me why we set out to do this in the first place. We're not about being against anybody, not about being against another political party. We're not going to define ourselves by who or what we are against or afraid of or scared of. We are great people, ambitious, defined by our aspirations, the hard work that we are willing to commit in order to achieve them. Every single one of us, Republicans, Democrats, independents, from the biggest of cities, from the smallest of towns, the people of Texas want to do and will do the great work of this country. I just now had the opportunity to talk to Senator Cruz and to congratulate him on his victory and to wish him well going forward. And what I said and what I pledge on behalf of all of us is that at this time of division, the country's been as polarized as I can remember it in my life. All this bitterness that defines so much of the national conversation today. If there's anything that we can do to help him in his position of public trust, to ensure that Texas helps to lead this country in a way that brings us back together around the big things that we want to achieve, whether that's making sure We face any threats arrayed against this country, whether that means that we are there for every single one of us who needs a helping hand so that we can live to our full potential, the ability to see a doctor, go to the hospital, receive the medication that you need to be alive. I want to work with him. I will work with anyone to make sure that we can lead on that. You amazing public school educators who work so hard and do so much for so many of us. I'll work with him. I'll work with anyone, anytime, anywhere to make sure in the same way that you've been there for us that now we can be there for you. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, but as Texans, as Americans. I want to make sure, especially, that this community that raised me, made me who I am, where Amy and I are so lucky and fortunate enough to be raising our kids, Ulysses and Molly and Henry, who are here with us tonight, that we offer our experience and our perspective and our courage and our confidence on the issues that we know best as one half of the largest binational community anywhere in the Americas, joined with Ciudad Juarez to form something powerful, magical, and nothing to be afraid of or walled off or to apologize for. I want to make sure that this proud community offers all it has to give to this country and to our future and to ensuring that our greatest days are still ahead. And that the policy that we craft and the laws that we write and the way in which we treat each other comes not out of fear, but comes out of confidence and strength and this kind heart that I've always known El Paso to have. I don't know any way to say this other than, El Paso, I love you so much. I am so proud of you and this city and this community and what you mean to the rest of this country. And what you have achieved tonight, along with so many other amazing people all across this state. The kindness and generosity that you have shown to me and to Amy, to our family, to our campaign is amazing. It's why my faith in this state and this people as a country is in no way diminished at this moment. I know that we will continue to work to come together, to make sure that we live up to the promise and the potential of this country. I know it because I've met you everywhere that you are. I've listened to you everywhere that you live. I want to thank tonight my family, beginning with Amy, who has borne the toughest burden, raising our kids, supporting me, loving me, giving me strength and encouragement at every step of the way, making sure that we could finish this just as strong as we started it. I want to thank our kiddos. I want to thank my mom and my sisters and our family, all of whom are here tonight, for being such great examples to me. I love you guys. I want to thank this amazing campaign of people, not a dime from a single pack, all people, all the time, in every single part of Texas. All of you showing the country how you do this. I'm so fucking proud of you guys. And David and Jody and Chris and Cynthia and everyone who works on this campaign, every volunteer, every ambassador, everyone who knocked on doors, everyone who made phone calls, everyone who allowed themselves to hope and to believe and to be inspired by one another and to turn that into action and into votes, and to do something that no one thought was possible, to build a campaign like this one, solely comprised of people from all walks of life, coming together, damning the differences, and deciding that what unites us is far stronger than the color of our skin, how many generations we can count ourselves an American, or whether we just got here yesterday, who we love, who we pray to, whether we pray at all, who we voted for last time. None of that small stuff matters now. It is the greatness to which we aspire and the work that we're willing to put into it to achieve it, by which we will be known going forward. And this campaign holds a very special place in the history of this country every day going forward. And you have made that possible.
Sorry about the F-bomb. We have no control over what's in the concession speeches of various candidates around the country. A quick call while O'Rourke was speaking. We had a race decided in Iowa, gang. Here we go. There's our projection animation. This is Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, the incumbent, returning. And Steve Kornacki tells us we've had two flips in the intervening moments.
Two more House races to tell you about. Illinois' 14th district, exurbs of Chicago. Romney won this district. Trump won this district. Republican Congressman Randy Holtgren failed to win this district tonight. Lauren Underwood defeating him. We're projecting she leads by less than 5,000 votes right now, but we are projecting her the winner. This will be a Democratic pickup in a district that Donald Trump won. Also, we said it looked like this was going to happen. We now say officially it has happened. Carolyn Bordeaux has unseated Rob Woodall in the 7th district. This was sort of a late arrival on everyone's list. They thought Georgia 6 would be where the action was. Turned out the 7th is the one that's flipped. And one more very quickly that's emerging right now as a story for people watching the House closely. Think of, this is the 1st district of South Carolina. Mark Sanford, remember, unseated in a Republican primary, ousted by Katie Arrington. Look at this. Not a lot of vote left, and Katie Arrington has fallen behind by close to 4,000 votes there.
Wow, there are surprises in these House races. Everybody had been combing every House race in the country looking to see where there were these pickups. I had my eye on that Lauren Underwood race because I felt like she's first-time candidate, incredibly charismatic, was really good at getting press, getting attention, articulating her own message in a way that was so down to earth. She worked her butt off. I was watching her race. I still didn't expect that she was going to win that.
And what's important about that is races like that are the ones where they're not out there trying to get all the attention. They're working beneath the radar. They're doing their business. They're going door to door. They're really like they're running for city council, or something like that. And those races are the ones that sneak up on you oftentimes. It's one of the advantages we had going into 2010 with state legislative races, for example, where you get those pickups where no one's paying attention. And you got the candidate who fits the district, who's saying the right things. We saw it in Virginia earlier this year with the special election there where, the transgendered individual who everybody was running against, hey, she did the job. She went out and said, I'm going to fix the roads and the streets, and she won.
You picked up 63 seats.
63 seats.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty good work in 2010.
You get to live, no matter what else you do in your life.
That's right.
That will always be the thing we did as chairman.
63,
and they will never give you credit for it, but we do.
But thank you.
In fact, they did not give you credit for it. Anyway, let's bring in now the Democratic National Chairman, Tom Perez, and we've been talking, Tom, and thanks for coming on. We've been talking about trying to figure out what will the Democrats do with their new power, controlling the House of Representatives. You've got the power over the purse strings of the federal budget. You control tax policy, basically, your party does. You control all entitlement spending. You can fix or leave alone Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You can mess with, of course, Obamacare, if you will, or negotiate some reforms in it. What do you see as your party's role? Is it probing, investigating, or legislating, or what mix?
It's going to be all of the above, because we're going to fight to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We have been doing that since Obamacare, and we're going to continue to do it. We're going to fight to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I believe we can work through a bipartisan infrastructure bill that will put people to work in good jobs that pay a middle-class wage and can help repair our roads and bridges and our pipes and all that. And those are real jobs that have real meaning. we have to address the challenges confronting dreamers, and we're going to do it. And you know, the appropriations process, you correctly point out, that's a really important period of time for us to say, for instance, to the Commerce Department, you shall not ask questions about immigration status on the census. There's a law. There's a lawsuit about the citizenship issue, and we know that the Commerce Secretary was he had Steve Bannon and others on speed dial when he was doing that. The reasons they articulated for doing that, I know, having led the Civil Rights Division, were absolutely bogus and not based in any sort of fact. So there is a lot of power there, and we're going to use it responsibly to make people's lives better, to focus on the issues that matter most to people. That's what we're going to do.
We've been trying to figure out Donald Trump, like a lot of people are always trying to figure him out, but his pattern hasn't been that productive, or that he hasn't pushed himself as a negotiator. Do you have any hunch about him, now that he's taken a punch in the House of Representatives, his willingness to get down on the table and spend a weekend negotiating with Nancy Pelosi, the new speaker, on immigration, even on health care, on infrastructure, as you mentioned?
Well, we're certainly going to try. You heard Leader Pelosi tonight say we're going to extend that hand, because the American people want solutions. And we will offer solutions on infrastructure. We will offer solutions. We've already offered a solution on the DREAM Act. And one day he said he was for it, and then his base didn't allow him to do it. He has to stand up to his base and say, you know, we are a nation of immigrants and we are a nation of laws, and we can do both. But he has, until now, been unwilling to stand up to his far-right base. And so we're going to keep trying. And we're going to keep fighting for health care. We're going to keep fighting to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and make sure that the Secretary of Education actually supports public education, and the EPA administrator is actually understanding climate science. We're going to do that because that oversight role is absolutely critical, and there has been no guardrails in this Congress. The Republicans have just capitulated at every turn to this president. We need guardrails. We need checks and balances. That's what our system's about.
Tom Perez, chairman of the Democratic National Committee. You've got the House of Representatives. Congratulations, sir. Back to Brian.
And we're going to take a break in our coverage and continue with live returns, including the entire state of California coming in now when we come back. .24 Eastern Time, we are back. We have a barn burner of a story we're covering. Split government, control of the House to the Democrats. The Senate remains Republican control. The hardest working man in show business remains Steve Kornacki at the board. Every spare moment I look over at him, and he's in a different congressional district. Steve, what's the story as you look over your nation of 50 states there?
Yeah, well, it's still unfolding. I mean, I'll give you three real close ones we have right now. First of all, the Arizona Senate race. This is Martha McSally and Kyrsten Sinema. Take a look here. Of course, Arizona, all of that early voting. We get so much of the vote very quickly on election day. You see McSally leading right now. Look at the margin. 3,500 votes. You can see 60% of the vote comes from one county in Arizona, Maricopa County. And you can see, look at this. This is why it's so close. Hillary Clinton lost this state by 3 points in 2016. She lost this county by 3 points. Sinema has managed so far with about 84% in there to reverse that. And that's why it's basically deadlocked statewide. So that's a razor thin race. We've been updating you on the Wisconsin governor's race. This thing has taken a turn for the closer, a 6,000 vote margin right now, separating Scott Walker from Tony Evers, Democratic challenger. One place to keep an eye on there. We updated this about a half an hour ago. Still, nothing more has come in from Brown County, probably the biggest piece of real estate left on the board where Walker can pick up some votes. Also, last time, they're down to their final precincts here in Madison-Dane. County. Every new precinct that reports here is giving assistance to Evers. And one other razor-thin race I want to go back to. We mentioned this earlier. This is kind of wild here. Let me see if I can fire it. It's Georgia's 6th district. So remember I showed you this a little while ago. It was down to 800 votes. Well, it shrunk a little bit.
Oh, geez.
It's down to 169 votes.
Wow.
At this moment, there, excuse me, there is one precinct in this entire district that is uncounted. It is in Cobb County. So Karen Handel has been winning here in Cobb County. We think there is one precinct left in this district. You can see Handel's been leading there, so that that lead there of 169 votes will probably go up just a little bit, but there is a recount provision that we are almost certain is going to be triggered, and so Georgia 6 looks like it's on its way to a... So they had the election in 2016, the special election in 2017, tonight's election, and now it looks like a recount. We're never going to get Georgia 6 out of the news.
Steve, can I ask you about a couple of governor's races in the Northeast?
Yes.
I'm interested in this, what we're seeing is sort of a GOP bubble in terms of governorships in the Northeast. Do you have anything on the Connecticut governor's race, and do you have anything on the Maine governor's race?
Yes, so the gap here has been closed to 25,000. Lamont still 25,000 behind here. You can see in Connecticut now more than 3/4 of the vote has been counted for. Still, though, you can see the city of Hartford, no votes in yet from the city of Hartford. You expect a boost there for Ned Lamont, but again, he is running from behind, and there are some of these other Republican areas still to come as well. Let's see if we can go up here to Maine and get this loaded in. Yes, there you go. And Janet Mills in the early going in Maine. And again, Maine, this is not a county-based system, so what you're seeing here are individual municipalities here. Mills, though, being helped that Portland right now, the city of Portland, the population center there, the vote disproportionately being counted from Portland right now, giving her that early gigantic advantage you see there in Maine, but we'll keep an eye on that one, obviously, as well as more vote comes in. Oh, one more thing I want to tell you about a development here. I meant to hit the Senate side here. Nevada, we all want to know who is going to win the Senate race. Heller, Rosen. The polls, you say, wait a minute, the polls in Nevada closed a couple of hours ago. Well, here's what they do in Nevada. If anybody is in line, I sound like a New Yorker now. I'm from Massachusetts. We say in line. If anybody is in line while at the close of polls, the polls stay open until everybody's voted, and no votes are counted or are released anywhere. And so we are still waiting for the first release of votes from Nevada now, a couple of hours after the polls closed. Apparently, there's been news reports that Dean Heller even spoke to his supporters, wasn't declaring victory or anything, but just came down to say something because everybody is waiting right now in Nevada.
Well, Steve, I have to ask you to go over to the Senate race that remains outstanding in Florida as well because of a similar sort of news report that I want to get at. Obviously, we've got this as too close to call in Florida between Rick Scott, the incumbent governor, and Bill Nelson, the incumbent senator there. We've been watching that incredibly closely all night. Two things to draw people's attention to, and I just want to check this out with you. As far as I understand it, if the distance between the two candidates is within a 0.5 percentage point, there will be a recall in Florida. And so that may be potentially a live issue here. But then I also, Steve, want to tell you this new reporting that we just got from Ali Vitale in Florida, who says a Nelson staffer made this announcement at his event, confirmed to me by another Nelson staffer. Quote, "This is obviously not the result Senator Nelson's campaign has worked hard for. The senator will be making a full statement tomorrow to thank all those who rallied for his cause." Not quite sounding like a concession, but how does that map onto what you're seeing in terms of the Florida data?
Yeah, so and this is, there's always the possibility, especially Volusia Broward, and that's why I'm just checking here to make sure nothing's changed. There's been some confusion through the night with, it looks like the entire county's come in, then it turns out sometimes we have these spotters in the field, it turns out, oh no, there's 10 precincts left over here, over there. That was happening earlier. We were seeing that in Broward in particular. We were seeing that in Volusia. I don't think that's an issue anymore. I'm going to go double check that right now. But yes, you're right in terms of that recount. Right now, 0.6 percentage point separating Rick Scott from Bill Nelson. Scott leading by 0.6 percentage point. So right now outside of that zone. But I think obviously whenever it gets that close, whenever the stakes are this high, not uncommon for campaigns to buy themselves a little time, like it sounds like Nelson's folks might be trying to do here.
Wow. We have been joined here in our studio by a friend of ours, Maria Teresa Kumar, head of Voto Latino.
Good to have you here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Your full-time job is mobilizing Latino votes. Are you declaring a victory in that effort tonight?
I'm declaring a victory that as before polls were closed, we had 3.3 million Latinos cast early votes, twice the amount that happened in 2014. So that's a big deal. And one of the things that we're seeing is that they were in pockets that we expected. We saw a huge increase in Texas, but Virginia, believe it or not, Georgia, North Carolina, places where historically the Latino vote does not move mountains, is moving mountains and shaking it up. But we are also seeing for the very first time, we're seeing a lot of firsts in this Congress. We're seeing over 22 women basically joining Congress, 15 of them who actually flipped Congress as well. Excuse me, flipped the seats. This is going to be the very first time we're going to have roughly 100 women elected all at once in one single night. We're going to see the youngest women ever go to Congress. We're going to see 2 Muslim American women go to Congress. There's a lot to celebrate. And the Democrats, for the very first time, have a fresh, young bench that actually reflects the party they claim to represent.
What do you make of what we saw in the early exit polls, national exit polls from NBC? We're used to skipping over the top line of all of those because every election you ask people, what's the most important issue? They say the economy. Yeah. Not today. Number one issue was health care, which is what Democrats were banking on in so many of their swing races right now. Number two issue, immigration. Knocking the economy down to third. Obviously, making immigration the most important issue for voters was a goal of the president, making immigration a most important issue for voters in a negative way. How does that map onto the kind of Latino turnout and the character of the Latino vote that you saw tonight?
Well, this was interesting. When you looked at young Latino voters, healthcare was their number one issue because it wasn't just them, but if their parents all of a sudden do not have a safety net, they have to quit college and they have to go basically support them. I mean, that is very much what changes their dynamic. But immigration also rallied the Latino vote because they heard the crying call of, we have been at the crosshairs of this administration from the very beginning, and he keeps going after the Latinos, not just on immigration, but this idea of denaturalization task force, this idea that all of a sudden you can be serving in the military and that we're going to pull you out, even though you've actually demonstrated that you should be participating. And the Latino community heard that loud and clear. And again, the people that were registering in record numbers in Texas were young Latino voters. Texas has the lowest voter participation, lowest participation in all 50 states. They had participation increased by over 500% just among young people right before the polls closed. Wow. It's a big deal.
It'll be fascinating, given that the impact of the Texas Senate race tonight will not be felt immediately in the Senate because Ted Cruz will go back. But the impact in Texas in terms of what the electorate is like in Texas and how you run to win in Texas will change forever.
Well, the fact that Pete Sessions lost, that is perhaps one of his safest seats. The Republicans should have taken that. The fact that he lost is one of the most unreported stories.
Yeah, 11-term incumbent. Speaking of unreported stories, our own Ari Melber has been doing some reporting behind the scenes tonight, including talking to some of the Democrats who are going to be in charge of key elements of the of the congressional leadership in the House. And Ari, I've just received a note that says that you have spoken with Congressman Jerry Nadler. He's the likely incoming chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Obviously, everybody hears Judiciary Committee, they think Watergate and they think impeachment proceedings. Congressman Nadler has made clear that's not what he wants to talk about. That's not what he sees as central to his role on the Judiciary Committee. What did he tell you tonight about what his priorities are going to be?
That's right, Rachel. I spoke to Jerry Nadler, who's the top Democrat ranking member, which means he's most likely to chair the committee. And he put down a marker on the record when we spoke. And he said, if now Donald Trump tries to sabotage the Mueller probe or interfere by firing, quote, key people or abusing the pardon power, then, quote, all options are on the table. He didn't use the I word, impeachment, and as you say, they've been careful about that. But when someone running the Judiciary Committee in the House says all options are on the table, that's a clear marker. I also asked him point blank, okay, but what if there are other things done to slow the Mueller probe? What can you do if there's still this Republican Senate? And he said, for example, he didn't want to do hypotheticals, Rachel, but he said they have the power to order all documents legally preserved. That could include sealed indictments, grand jury material, other things that are legally protected. So this is another way that we're seeing directly from people on the staff of these committees, or in this case, the ranking member himself, outlining very clearly in public what they want to do. I also asked him, Rachel, about the potential removal of Jeff Sessions. And there he struck an interesting note. He said it would be suspicious if Donald Trump moves with haste to try to get rid of Jeff Sessions after these midterms. But his line is not the removal of Sessions, but he told me rather who would be put in. And is it a person that they see as designed to interfere with the probe or not?
Now, in terms of what you just said, Ari, about the preservation of documents, I mean, one of the things that we don't necessarily know, but we've been anticipating about Mueller is that he may make some sort of report to Congress. And that if he makes a report to Congress, Congress is going to have to decide what to do with it. Now, if that report goes to a Republican-controlled committee, we had a pretty good guess what might happen to that sort of a report. It might just disappear and never be heard from again. When Nadler talks about preserving documents, is he talking about making sure that any public production or congressional production from Mueller sees the light of day and gets to the public? Or is he talking about the risk that Mueller's office might be shut down, in which case his committee would try to physically preserve the material evidence that Mueller has collected?
I think in our conversation today over the phone, he was talking about the latter, the emergency preservation, because we do know that if there was a potentially unlawful removal of Bob Mueller, that itself would end up in court, but that takes time. He's saying the big difference starting tonight is that the Democrats have the legal authority to preserve everything even before the courts act. I think more broadly, we know from the Ken Starr precedent, there's the report that's issued that can guide the House, and then there's everything else that's in those files. And so it matters a lot right now that the Democrats have this extra power here to basically be a police bumper, a police line for this open investigation.
Ari Melber, that's great reporting. You're adding a lot to our understanding about what it means for the Democrats to be taking control of the House with tonight's elections. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A bit of news from upstate New York. Chris Collins has won re-election to the House.
While under indictment.
Way up there, yep.
That's not that easy. You got to give him credit. When you're facing federal corruption charges, that's a hurdle that most people don't have.
That is an uncommon hurdle, but he's been richly rewarded for staying in the race. His victory tonight over Nate McMurray in the northern tier of upstate New York.
Congratulations, District 27.
And let us, without delay, go out to El Paso, Texas, where Chris Hayes is under active threat of being asked by security to leave. The party's over, as the song says. Chris, what's your after-action report on what you witnessed there tonight?
I mean, look, I think that all the talk about Beto as sort of a national political figure after tonight is not wrong. I mean, part of it is the baseline against which he was performing has been so dire and so terrible for Texas Democrats for so long. And what he was able to pull off, and every Texas Democrat will tell you this, it helped everywhere in the party. It helped. The Texas Democrats tonight had a good night for the first time in a long time. And one thing I think you saw in that speech is Democrats are trying to figure out how to craft a message in the Trump era, in some ways, how to keep the Obama coalition, which was a majority coalition for 2 presidential elections, together. And they've got a hard job, right? Because they have to cobble together lots of different groups. They have to get a bunch of different kinds of demographics into the same tent. And one of the things you saw from Beto in his message, it's relentlessly positive, it's upbeat, it's about unity. And that harkens back to Barack Obama in 2004 with that famous DNC speech and the campaign he ran in 2008. And I think that there's something about that for Democrats as they think about what their message is when you are trying to put together a genuinely diverse and multiracial coalition, which is the only one that will work for a Democratic Party, both in the state of Texas, in other places, and nationally. You got to figure about what it is that binds people together and what unites them. And that's a hard thing, I think, to talk about in this current environment. But I think Beto was rewarded with the kind of result you saw tonight with that kind of message.
One follow-up would be a harsh-sounding point/question, and that is Barack Obama won.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know, there's no precedent really for someone to run nationally after what Beto's done, except for basically Abraham Lincoln, who, of course, famously lost his Senate race. It's a very tough hill to climb. But the other thing of the Trump era is who the heck knows, right? I mean, Donald Trump's the president of the United States. So no one knows. And I've said all along, the odds of the 2020 Democratic nominee being someone whose name wasn't even on people's radar screen in mid-2018 is particularly high. So you never know in American politics in the year of 2018.
Chris Hayes out in El Paso, where the stadium lights have come on, indicating the end of the night and the end of the Beto O'Rourke campaign. More indictment news.
Yeah, I just got to say, we're on a roll here. We just were talking about Chris Collins, the indicted New York congressman. He's under federal felony indictment, which doesn't mean like they're thinking about charging him. He's under investigation. Like, no, he's been charged with felonies. He's going to be on trial. Chris Collins has just been reelected in New York 27. And the other sitting Republican congressman who has been charged with 60 felonies, Duncan Hunter, has been charged with a 60-count federal corruption indictment, and Duncan Hunter has just been reelected by the proud voters of California Congressional District 50.
Republican values. They do not value law-abiding. It's so funny. I mean, for Donald Trump, lock her up, law and order. Like, we now got two indicted Republicans who won tonight. Wow. Republicans no longer.
When we saw Blum in Iowa, Blum is not under indictment, but he's facing a very serious ethics charge that he was basically running a fake business out of his congressional office. There's going to be an ethics report about him next month, and so in being reelected. So that means that, I mean, what he's been indicted for in part is using his campaign money to live off of.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
now he's going to be using his campaign money presumably to pay his defense lawyers.
These two could go to jail, and it would be funny if it wasn't sad, or sad if it wasn't funny. And two words, tactical pants. I mean, this was a cabinet with a bunch of because it's
Scott Pruitt is going to walk in here and show you his pants.
The corruption, the volume business of corruption, and ethics is putting it kindly. These guys are charged with serious crimes.
Yeah, multiple felonies.
Not just corruption.
But in the California race, what's interesting is that they went after. This is a former Obama alum when that was running, and they basically went after and threw the book at him, basically calling him that he was part of ISIS and he was part of this Muslim.
He was infiltrating the Congress for the Muslim Brotherhood.
It was terrible, and to actually see that in California itself, a bastion of liberalism, I think there's a lot to unpack there.
And he was a national security. Can we put the board back up there on the Duncan Hunter race? Is that possible? I don't know if that's already cycled through. But he was a national security official in the Obama administration to the extent that he had multiply renewed security clearances. And Duncan Hunter went after him as literally a security threat. But the voters of Congressional District 50 in California have rewarded Mr. Hunter. If he does go to jail, they will have to make a decision about whether they're comfortable with him still representing them in Congress from prison. But that'll be soon.
Can you imagine those fundraising emails?
You're being too specific. He's a bad guy.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he's a nice guy to his friends, but he's going to jail in all likelihood.
On that note, we're going to change Steve Kornacki's SIM card, and we will be back with more returns after this break.
In the great state of Maine, NBC News can now project that Paul LePage, controversial Republican governor, will be succeeded by a woman and a Democrat. Sean Moody has conceded the Republican running against Janet Mills. Janet Mills will become the first woman governor of Maine, I believe, and a Democrat succeeding the controversial, sort of pugnacious governor of Maine, Paul LePage, who was Trumpy before Trump. Governor LePage, on the eve of the election, announced to his constituents that now that he was leaving office as governor, he'd be moving to Florida full-time.
Yep.
Really? Literally, he announced that yesterday.
The climate is better and the taxes are less.
Yeah. So again, had he said that earlier on, it would have shed some light on his governing decisions.
So enough of Maine winters for the former governor of the state. We are joined by a great friend of ours, Michael Beschloss, the author and presidential historian who's been, I understand, very patient waiting to talk to us. Michael, let's talk about the accumulation and awarding of power and what the Democrats might do with that. I suppose it is possible that they will overreach, but have you been able to grab any parallels given your vast knowledge of history tonight?
Yeah, I could talk to you until the cows come home, Brian, about 1946 when Truman lost both houses, or, 1994 when Bill Clinton did the same thing. But I think tonight is something that we haven't seen before in American history, because we are watching a House of Congress pass from the party of a president at the same time as there is a serious investigation by a special prosecutor that is really a danger to this administration. At a time where we've seen enormous corruption and abuse of power, to my mind, even during the last couple of weeks. You know, the use by a president of armed forces to go down to the border for a threat that I think was, to a great degree, contrived to help him win this election. And the other thing that we've seen that's unusual is that we've seen lapdog leaders of his own party. You know, many people felt that when Donald Trump became president, the Republicans owned the House and Senate, at least there would be some criticism from the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. I think most people have been as astounded that he has been as compliant as he has been. So if this didn't happen tonight, you could have seen the Mueller report deep-sixed, all those things metastasize.
Is there anything in you that leads you to believe that the most momentous portion of the Trump administration is yet to come? Forget what we've just witnessed for 2 years.
Oh, I think absolutely. But it might have been more momentous if he had still owned both houses of Congress, because he would have felt licensed to do all sorts of things that he will now think twice about, now that he has to confront a Democratic House with power of subpoena and investigation. James Madison would love this. He would have been horrified by the idea that a president could have gone on for 4 years with not only owning the House and Senate, but now with a 5-justice majority in the Supreme Court, and the 5th justice, someone that Donald Trump chose, I believe, because Brett Kavanaugh had the most extremely permissive views of how much power a president can have.
Republicans are fond of reminding everyone that they are the party of Lincoln. We have heard the president say that recently. We can't assume, but with the air of someone who learned it fairly recently, parties go through cycles and they change their definitions. Are we seeing any of that? Is it like the eye wall replacement cycle in a hurricane?
I think Abraham Lincoln, if he were to come back, he would not recognize his party. And it may be that if the Republican Party wants to make a change at some point in history, they may feel that they need to change the name. That has happened with other parties earlier in our history. The Whigs flamed out in the 1850s.
I'm on record as being a friend, but I'm also just a reader. And so on that basis, to our viewers, I can't recommend Presidents of War, Michael's new book, highly enough, having just completed it. Michael, thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on the air.
Thank you.
One of the things that we are still watching for tonight, and we're actually expecting it to be a big bunch of news when it finally comes in, is the results from contested House races in California. Now, polls are closed in California. They have been closed for well over an hour. And there's, you know, from a distance going into tonight, the biggest group of any state's House races that the Democrats are hoping to flip was in California. Democrats are hoping to flip as many as 7. Now, on a night like tonight, the Democrats are already closing in on a 30-seat gain in the House of Representatives, which is a big gain for any midterm election. But that's before any of these California races are counted. Our friend Jacob Soboroff has been on the ground for us in Santa Ana, California, not only watching what voters are doing, but watching what's expected in terms of the process. Jacob?
Rachel, so this is not only extraordinarily consequential, as you are describing, but also for people like me and you guys who are nerdy about elections, this is really, really cool. Come with me. So what's happening right now is literally hundreds of thousands of ballots from across Orange County, California are being unloaded from all these different vans that are being brought back here. They have little chips, and they're inside each one of these boxes. I'm going to let you watch that one go by, but they're taken out one at a time. So we'll watch this next one come out. They're coming from 1,000 different polling places from across Orange County. Let's follow this one in. They put them on this conveyor belt. They push them down the conveyor belt into this warehouse that is run by the Orange County Register. Come on, let's go. We're going down with this one ballot. Who knows? This could be thousands of ballots on a little chip that's inside here. Neil Kelly, my friend, is the registrar. You guys see where Neil went? Sheriffs, they're very serious, but this is a secure area. There he is. Neil Kelly is the registrar. Okay, here we go. They're coming. Neil, we're live on the air. Come on over. This man is responsible for not only 4 toss-up congressional districts, but ultimately, I guess, how many seats the Democrats gain in the House. It's a lot of pressure on you as the registrar. It's the 5th largest election jurisdiction in the country. All these chips are coming in, hundreds of thousands of votes. You seem very calm.
I am calm, but thanks for reminding me about the pressure, because there is a lot of pressure involved in this. But, you know, these folks work really hard, and we've been preparing for this for a long time.
I actually want to ask you a quite serious question. You and I were talking yesterday about the fact that you have been on the Homeland Security Election Advisory Committee task force. For 2 years, you've been working with the FBI. You said that you have been probed, scanned by foreign actors, foreign governments, including Russia and China. What does that mean? Should the voters of Orange County be worried about the integrity of the vote counting process tonight?
That's a great question. The answer is no, because we've done a lot of work over the last 2 years to make sure we're resilient and prepared for this. And I can tell you right now that those efforts are paying off. This security is secure, the ballots are secure, and we're ready for it.
All right, Neil, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Rachel Bryan, come with me. I want to show you just one more thing. So once these things ultimately get unloaded, they take the chips out of the machine. So here's the machines over here. They open them. Can you open that up real quick, just one more time? These are the vote counting machines that actually in each of the polling places. They take a chip out of them, and then they come over to here. They get one of these little things that looks like kind of like a thermos. They put the chips inside here. They open up this spot. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. It goes into this tube right here, pneumatic tube, shot up, and over into the counting room where they're going to count these hundreds. I think I really screwed something up here, so maybe I should throw it back to you guys.
Oh, Jacob, so you were just used past a very serious-looking sheriff. Is he coming for you?
No, they're okay. They're over there. They've turned the other way. The alarm stopped. I think we're good. So pneumatic tube is safe.
Put the tube down.
Put the thermos down.
Put it down, Jacob. And keep your hands where everybody can see them. Okay, thank you.
That's true. All right, thank you. I guess I should throw it back to you guys then for now.
That's great.
Yes, very good.
Somebody
Jacob
just lost by
Soboroff.
50,000 votes.
Yes, exactly. Jacob Soboroff doing a great job. Also totally innocent. We should point out.
Step away from the pneumatic tube.
I think we should stay on that. I mean, I feel like anything could happen.
Well, we do need to keep rolling just in case we need to use it in court.
Yeah.
But he seems all right.
I think they like it.
Orange County, we should say, where Jacob is, where Jacob was just live there at the facility where they're taking in those votes. Orange County's got 4 toss-up races. I mean, that registrar of voters there, who does have, I talked to Jacob about this earlier this week, does have the support of everybody who's expert in the field in the area, but it's seen as, it's hugely populated. It's going to be a ton of votes, and it could be a very big chunk of the Democratic majority in the House.
Steve Schmidt, forgive me, sorry.
Please.
I was just going to ask you about election integrity. Most of what we talk to you on the air about is what has happened vis-a-vis Russia and this administration. We're covering a lot of incoming numbers tonight. People have gone to the polls with that inherent American promise in mind that your vote will be recorded and has integrity. Do you think all Americans can assume that tonight about every vote we've cast?
I have faith in the integrity of the election system, but the integrity of the election system has been undermined over the last 2 years by the faithlessness of this administration and specifically the president with regard to getting to the bottom of the foreign interference in the 2016 presidential election. Trust, faith, and belief are the lubricants of a democracy. And when trust collapses and faith erodes, belief also collapses. And so the integrity of the election system is fundamental to the democracy, and there's no higher duty that any Republican president would have, any Democratic president would have, than to maintain that integrity and the trust of it for the American people, that no matter the outcome, right? Parties win elections, parties lose elections. You come back and you try to win the next one. But that both sides understand that when the voters speak, that the judgment is final, and that both sides accept the result and we move on. And that's the tragedy of the dereliction of duty we've seen over the last 2 years.
Chris?
And, you know, what did you make of the fact that in 2016, when Trump thought he was going to lose, he started playing with the idea of a rigged election? He's throwing that out there. And he did it again the other day. I'm not sure he won't do it tomorrow morning when we wake up and said the House is gone because they stole it.
We've seen it all through the evening, and the difficulty of the concession speech. It's a painful moment for a candidate. But, for example, when John McCain conceded to President Obama, the first person who mattered that addressed Barack Obama as Mr. President-elect wasn't David Axelrod or David Plouffe. It was John McCain. The loser grants legitimacy to the winner of an American election through their concession. And in a presidential election, that concession commences the peaceful transition of power, which happens on the inauguration day. The concessions today begin the peaceful transition between senators, between members of Congress. It takes place with the swearing in of the new Congress in January. It's an important moment.
I'm told Steve Kornacki has, what do we have, a correction of some numbers?
Yes, we do. We were telling you earlier about the 7th District of Georgia. It called the 7th District of Georgia for Carolyn Bordeaux over Rob Woodall, the Republican incumbent. We are being told there was a data entry error, not on our end, I am told, but nonetheless a data entry error, and it has changed, as you can see, the trajectory of this race. Rob Woodall, who had been trailing, now leads by 6,000 votes over now that has adjusted to reflect that. Rob Woodall leading by 6,000 votes there. A couple of precincts left. We're obviously still just trying to sort this out. If we're going to characterize this again, want to make sure we get it right, because this was a Democratic pickup a minute ago. In the suburbs of Atlanta, now looking like something else.
Can we go next door to Georgia 6?
Yes, and that is, I believe, status quo. No, and Handle, okay, that final precinct did come out. So there was one outstanding precinct from Cobb County, and you can see right here that Handle picked up my head here. That's about 1,588 votes, I think, separating them. And I believe that is within a point there. So that still looks like recount territory in the 6th District of Georgia.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. That is very rare then that when a call like that has to be changed. But having transparency that it was a data entry error at least helps explain what happened.
And you have to wonder, we don't know what has happened on the ground. Was there a concession? Was there a victory party? Was this a data entry error on a local or statewide basis? Did everyone report this way?
So it's always troubling when it happens that way. But that's, there's a gazillion races. There's hundreds of races tonight, and that's going to happen at some point.
I see Steve has just refreshed his board to show the Senate races. What do we have?
Yeah, let's take a look here in Montana. We showed you earlier, John Tester, he continues to lead. It's tight right now, though, a little tighter than before, a 3,000 vote edge for Tester. Two things are happening here. There is such a thing in Montana as a core Democratic area. One, Glacier County, yet to be reported there. So we're waiting on that one. We also have Cascade. This is just sort of the early vote that's tallied here. A lot more to come. Tester should pick up some. And also here, no vote here. So Tester has 3 counties. The thing that we are seeing, though, and the reason it's tight, and I think this gets into a national trend we've been seeing, is these rural areas. And we saw this in the South, and I think we're seeing this a bit in Montana as well. These rural areas that swung so hard to Trump. Tester is doing better than Hillary Clinton did in them, but he is not doing as well as he did when he won re-election in 2012. And so that's why he's sort of exceeding in the western part of the state. He's exceeding the numbers he had when he won re-election. But in some of those rural parts in the east, he's not matching those numbers. And so there's sort of that trade-off, that balancing act we're seeing for Republicans. They're getting blown out in a lot of these suburbs now where Donald Trump didn't do well in 2016. But their strength in a lot of these rural areas, these ex-urban areas, it is more pronounced maybe in the Trump era. Quickly, just to show you where things stand in Arizona. Now Martha McSally, just in the last few minutes, has taken an 11,000 vote lead over Kyrsten Sinema. We can show you the story here. Again, more than 60% of the vote in the state is going to come out of Maricopa County. And what happened here, Sinema is still leading in Maricopa County, but her lead has shrunk. It was about 3 points. The last sort of flurry of votes that came in favored McSally. It brought her to within a point in Maricopa, and also that did bring her into the lead statewide. Still more vote to come there. That's primarily where the action is in Arizona. So obviously this is a very important race for Democrats now, just in the sense that they have lost so many other seats tonight. This would be a pickup if they are able to get it.
Much appreciated, Steve. Thank you.
Another result from California, Devin Nunes has won re-election.
Yes, Devin Nunes has not won re-election as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
No.
He will now be he will either move off of that committee or he will go back to being the ranking member. Devin Nunes was a target both for Democrats and Republicans nationwide. He received a tsunami of Republican money because of his role on the Intelligence Committee, using that committee to the benefit of President Trump, to such incredible conservative media acclaim. Andrew Jans gave him a run for his money in his district. Things aren't usually even that close for Devin Nunes in his deeply conservative district, but obviously Devin Nunes winning comfortably tonight at home in California, 22.
Don't know about the Rohrabacher race with any certainty yet. Our man in California is Lawrence O'Donnell and is standing by. Lawrence, California never disappoints.
Yes, and California's job now is simply to say, in the end, what is the ultimate margin that the Democrats will have in the House of Representatives. They obviously have it, and now it's just down to that. And as Rachel just mentioned, Devin Nunes will not be chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and that is among the many important developments tonight that changes with the House. Donald Trump's political life and his legal life changes utterly tonight. Robert Mueller cannot be fired. That threat is over. Donald Trump will try to fire him again. He will want to try to fire him again. But more than one voice in the White House will explain to him that if he does that, the House of Representatives will begin an impeachment investigation that day. And so Robert Mueller is one of the big winners tonight in terms of the security of his position and in his ability to go forward with his special prosecuting investigation. And that is a change for Donald Trump. The game he's been playing with the firing of Jeff Sessions, which has always been about the firing of Robert Mueller, because you get, or basically the removal of Robert Mueller's effectiveness by putting a new Attorney General supervising Robert Mueller. That game ended tonight, and that is a huge change for the future of the Trump presidency and for the future of the way things are going to work in Washington.
Lawrence, I've just been told the Republicans have grabbed South Dakota governor. Noem is the victor after a long night. Kristi Noem from the House of Representatives has defeated Billy Sutton with 94% of the raw in. That is our projection. And Mr. Kornacki has alerted us to a drama in Wisconsin. We've been covering this on a slow motion basis all night.
It feels like about 2 years ago at this time we had some drama in Wisconsin. So here we go again. Scott Walker trying to hang on, win a third term as we survive that recall. Right now he trails Tony Evers by just over 6,000 votes. And you see most of the map filled in here. There are a few pockets left, though, where Walker can still pick up some votes and eat into that margin. He could eliminate the margin, in fact, probably in Brown County, where Green Bay is. Still half the vote at least to come there. A significant lead for Walker. But here is the suspense. Here's the wild card, and here is the drama. Take a look here at Milwaukee County, obviously huge Democratic area. We have just been told that the city of Milwaukee has 45,000 uncounted absentee ballots that are going to be counted in the next hour. And so that is the biggest single wild card that we were not even aware of until a few minutes ago that has the potential to alter the math. There are some areas, we showed you Brown County, there are some other areas in the state where Scott Walker can pick up a lot of vote. There is one giant one left there for Democrats as well. And again, with Evers clinging to a 6,000 vote lead right now.
Wow.
Steve, where do you, in terms of with those votes yet to be counted and the timing on those getting counted, what does that mean in terms of how you think this is going to play out ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, this was a complete surprise to me because I was doing the math here just a minute ago, and we were looking at it, and, you know, we were saying it was all going to come down to Brown County right here. And again, you can see the 11,000 vote advantage that Scott Walker has right there. You would look at this, you'd look at this is a 2-to-1 margin. It's been steady all night. We're talking about a core Democratic area. So I think you'd look at that and you'd say the expectation is, you just do the math if you extrapolate that. And I'm not saying it's going to end up this way, but that's about 30,000 to 15,000 if it breaks the same way. Maybe it's more Democratic than that, but that would be a 15,000 vote edge right there if it just broke the way the vote is in Milwaukee County right now. And there was a little more vote that just came in as I went to the screen. I can see we're at about 6,218 votes right now. If you added 15,000, and then you'd be up over 20,000, and then you go into Green Bay here with about half. That could bring it back down just under 10,000. There are some other areas for Walker, too. very, very tight. That's what it looks like.
The reason I asked you to clarify is I was trying to do that math with you as you were explaining it, and for me, it looked like it added right up for Evers, and then it added right back down to 0.
Yeah.
That may end up, I mean, depending, we'll see how they come in. Votes are votes, but we'll see how they come in. This may end up being an absolute squeaker in Wisconsin. And again, if Scott Walker survives for a 4th straight governor's race in Wisconsin, he should get something other than just being governor again. There should be like some belt,
trophy,
a cake, something.
Belt buckle.
Belt buckle, gigantic Wisconsin belt buckle, maybe cheese. I don't know.
Look at that board. Can we go back to the Steadicam shot of the governors? Important to. It's been such a long night. Some reminders there. Florida, Ohio. These are big states and big Republican victories tonight, especially for DeSantis.
Yeah, but look at, I mean, the Kansas governorship, Laura Kelly beating Chris Kobach.
Yep.
Also a big deal. Michigan governor going to the Democrats after the long reign of Rick Snyder there and his attorney general, Bill Schuette, trying to win there. It's interesting. I mean, the fact that we've still got Georgia outstanding, we still got Wisconsin outstanding, we still got Montana and Arizona Senate outstanding, plus we've got all of those California House races outstanding. We knew it was going to be a late night. I didn't think we'd have a lot of these top-of-the-ticket races still.
You tried to warn me on Sunday about the lateness. But the other thing, though, about Florida has had Republican governors, I think, for more than 20 years. I mean, these are pretty red states. The bigger story might have been that Democrats came so close in all 3 of them.
Yeah, that is true.
I do think that one of the things as we're approaching 1 a.m., a little bit after 1 a.m., when we look at the totals coming in, Democrats are going to win by about 9% the popular vote for these House races in an economy with an unemployment rate of 3.7%. This is a massive repudiation of the governing party. You have to handicap this by the redistricting and gerrymandering. We live in a country substantially where the politicians pick their voters. But when you look at the numbers in an economy like this is a very big night for the Democratic Party. The Republican Party has gotten smaller tonight, and it will be crazier tomorrow morning. You will see the House Freedom Caucus grow from 30 members to 45. You're likely to see leadership fights inside the Republican Party, and the Republicans will not look at the popular vote loss and come to the conclusion that they've been repudiated. They'll look at races like Florida and Texas and say, hey, we won, even though the Democrats were knocking on the window in Republican states. And the lesson that they'll learn from it is the wrong lesson, that Trump's incitement politics works. The Freedom Caucus, which imposed on the Republican conference the removal of the pre-existing conditions protection, all these Republicans were wiped out because of it, and the result of it will be a larger Freedom Caucus. And this is the death spiral that the California Republican Party that Nicole and I are familiar with has been in for 20 years.
I'm told James Carville has rejoined us. And James, you're the perfect person to bring into this conversation. To Steve's point, this just leaves on its ear that argument about elections in a good economy. This reverses 50 years of political bromides.